Like to call to order the February 22nd meeting of the Clive City Council. Would the clerk please call roll?
Mayor Edwards,
Here.
council members Klein,
Here.
McCoy,
Here.
Judkins, not here, Weaver,
Here.
and McElhenney.
Very good. We've got everyone accounted for. If you all would rise and join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we have the approval of the agenda. I'm not aware of any changes.
Approval.
Second. Motion is second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The agenda is approved. Next, we have our citizens presentation. This is the opportunity for anyone to approach the council on an item that is not on the agenda. Pete, do we have anyone online who wants to do so?
For those online, you can use the raised hand function on your Zoom screen to get our attention here in the chamber. And then the mayor can identify you to speak if you would like.
And do we have anyone in the chamber to address us on an item that is not on the agenda? If so, if you'd come forward to the podium. While we're checking, let me just remind everyone that we follow the principles of character counts, endeavoring at all times to promote and model the principles of character counts. That is trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. So in all our endeavors, we expect everyone to follow those principles. Pete?
Nobody online, Your Honor.
And no one here, so we'll move on to a presentation. And we have Elks Lodge here with some great news for us.
They always have great news.
Well, yes,
Greg with the Elks, or I
Greg?
don't know who is representing, or
not sure who we got.
Okay, Roger's gonna do it. Okay.
Me, Mayor Edwards, Council. I'm Roger Fiore. I'm the exalted ruler of the West Des Moines Elks Lodge. We showed up today to formally present you with a check for $4,200 to be used towards the warming trailer that can't remember what we were calling it. The West Des Moines Elks was established in 1990. We started down in Valley Junction. After several years, we've ended up right over here on 94th Street. We've been a very strong supporter of the city of Clive. Every year we actively participate in your pilot program. We do a lot with Crestview School. We do a lot with your food pantry and the community center. We are always looking for new members. You guys like to come over, visit us. We're glad to have you. Mike is one of our members and we really appreciate everything he does with us. So.
Thank you, council.
Thanks very much for your generosity as always.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Thank you.
That's great. And I think Pete wants to get a picture of all you
Yep.
Yes, if possible.
with Jeff. Where is?
Oh, I wonder if he took the trailer back.
Yeah, he took it. Did we get a picture with Jeff?
We did not.
No, we did not.
Should be bringing it right back. He was just going to drop off.
I think he was gonna drop off and come back, but it might take a minute, so I don't want to.
We
Yeah.
can sit and wait. We go.
I can hit him outside.
Yeah. I can do that.
Let me see it.
Oh, the trailer is back. Gary, you want to take one down here in the chamber as well?
Whatever you prefer.
Yeah, let's do one here and then I'll slide out.
Time for this.
I'll follow you. You're the good.
No, not really.
You see my Christmas, you see this Christmas card? You guys probably didn't get one. Probably didn't get one.
Ready?
I got 3 of them.
but-
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. See you next year.
Yep.
No.
See the trailers here.
Oh,
Can't hear him.
you're muted.
guys, I just want to say thanks so much. You know, the West Des Moines Elks Lodge have been an integral part of the city of Clive, and you've done an awful lot for us for an awful lot of years. So thanks so much for your generous donation. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Again, we're so appreciative of being a part of what you do and your generosity. I mean, the impact on our workers when it's below zero is just incredible. I mean, the trailer is just a great asset.
Also
So-
want to note, Your Honor, too, the last month they did their law enforcement awards and recognized one of our officers, Officer Nick Anderson, with Law Enforcement Officer of the Year Award for Clive. So appreciate you
That is
doing that.
well. Great work, great work. Well, it's going to be hard to top that on the rest of our agenda, I can tell you that. We've got our consent items next.
Move to resolution.
Second.
Second on consent, further discussion, seeing none, will the council please vote, and will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 4-0. Thank you. Next, we'll move into our action items. First up, we have the Greenbelt Music Festival. Catherine.
Hello, Council. Horizon Event Center is requesting formal approval of the 2024 Greenbelt Music Festival temporary site plan. The first Greenbelt Music Festival was hosted in May of 2023 and was successful in a family-friendly event. And the council did receive a presentation summarizing the event at the June 8th, 2023 meeting. Horizon Event Center is proposing the same layout and setup for the 2024 Greenbelt Music Festival as was utilized in 2023. And at this time, staff would recommend approval of the temporary site plan with the same conditions as required for last year's event. The necessary liquor licenses have already been approved by City Council, and a noise permit will be submitted and administratively approved by city staff separately.
All right, questions on that or action?
Move approval.
Sorry, we also have Gary Ward here with Horizon Events. I probably should have started with that. So if you do have any questions or if Gary has any additional commentary, he can certainly add to that.
Gary, you should be able to unmute yourself if you'd like to say
Yep.
anything.
Here I am. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear,
That's what I
Gary.
hear you.
That's on us. Just give us one moment to turn down the volume real quick. All right, go for it, Gary.
I saw the reaction, so I apologize for that. I couldn't tone it down. No, we're really excited for it. So if you have any questions about, last year or this year, I certainly could answer. Our plan is to kind of copy and paste. It went really well. We did the presentation and kind of went through how everything went. And again, we're just excited to copy and paste and work with the team this year to hopefully have a second success.
Very good. Eric, do you have a question?
Yeah, Gary, last year the event went very smoothly without any problems. I heard a lot of positives on that. Could you review the music lineup that you were putting together for this year's festival?
Yes, I can. There are so many. I actually have to pull that up. I know Humphreys McGee and Railroad Earth are the two headliners. Really excited about both of those. And in fact, the Railroad Earth, their lead singer was at last year's event and did one of the indoor stages, kind of a surprise visit. And he went back, and about a week later, the booking agent had called and said, we need to have Railroad Earth at this festival for the next year, is how that kind of came about. So those are the two headliners. Let me quick pull up what we all have. So yeah, on Friday, Railroad Earth and Yonder Mountain String Band, and that's kind of like a co-headline. They play together really often, so we're really excited about that. Then we have Top House, B Twins, The Wildwoods, Woody and Sunshine, Winterland, which they were with us last year, and they're from Iowa City. And one of the most recommended bands to bring back actually was Winterland, so we're excited about that. Iowa No Mountain Boys, I really like their name. And 11 Moons would be our Friday lineup. And then on Saturday, we have, again, I mentioned Humphreys McGee, Sierra Hall, amazing bluegrass artist. Tariq and I went and saw her about 3 years ago, and we've been trying to get her to Horizon or at Greenbelt ever since. So we're really excited about that. Daniel Donato's Cosmic Country, another really popular band that's really growing really fast. So we're excited about that as well. Tall Tall Trees, Arkansas, another name that I really enjoy hearing. Buck Miller Schwager Band, Megan and the Birdwatchers, John Eric, the Midland Band, Flash in a Pan, and Alley Grass. And we're still working on a handful more. You know how we kind of had the indoor stage, and it's easy to add some more bands during the day. So I expect maybe 4 or 5 additional bands will jump onto our lineup for this coming year.
Very good. Any other questions or action we'd like to take?
Your Honor, I just have one question
Yes.
for Gary. Gary, are you intending, I know last year before the first event, you all sent kind of a mailing or communication out to the surrounding neighborhood. Are you intending to do that again this year?
Yep, we are, definitely are. And that'll include, you know, a bit of info from last year and the success. And then, you know, here's what we're doing this year, which will be very similar. You know, the only thing we've really changed is kind of the look of it. You know, if you look at the website and were to compare the marketing and the branding, it's a little different, but we certainly will send that out to, you know, the same folks that we did last year, maybe expand it a little more. So definitely plan on doing that. And then, probably have, I know we did an open house last year too, that was kind of a blend of the Horizon Event Center and what we were doing at Greenbelt, because we had just finished that previous phase of the new lobby and all that. So we plan on having another open house that if anybody wants to come and ask any questions, and we certainly can answer them. So quick answer would be yes, we do plan on doing that as we get about 60 days out from the event, I believe is when we're shooting for that.
Sounds good, Gary. If you would share that date of that open house with city staff, we would love to share that with the mayor and council too.
Absolutely.
Can you remind me on the noise permit? Is it just a regular, I mean, are we done at 10 or 10:30? I can't remember what time. I think it was actually earlier, so I wasn't sure why we needed the permit. But
10 p.m. last year is when we that's what we set with the artists. We need to be done at 10. Now we did go inside and we had additional bands play inside of the event center that went till about 11 o'clock, but that obviously doesn't affect the neighbors. So same thing. We have everything scheduled on the outdoor stage to turn off at 10 p.m.
thank you.
Anything else? Otherwise, I think we need a motion.
I already made a motion.
Did you?
And second.
Okay, then
I will have one more question.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I agree, and I spoke about this last year that I thought you did a great job. I'm at the top of that bowl and we could hear everything and it was well done as promised, ending and all that. I can't remember. We did have some complaints though. And were they just noise? I mean, we're going to get,
There were two.
We're gonna
I
get-
think we had 2 residents that complained.
We're gonna
and
get
it was just
those.
kind of normal
Sure.
complaints.
Yeah.
I don't, nothing out of the ordinary that I remember.
But it was sound related, you're right.
yeah. Okay. That's all.
anything else? If not, would the council please vote? And will clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 4 affirmatives. All right. Next, we have a memorandum of agreement with the Census Bureau. Matthew.
Yeah, staff has taken the initial steps to get that underway. We're proposing doing a partial special census in 2025 to capture the growth that has occurred up in the northern neighborhoods, as well as the addition of the Vibe and what will be happening with the McCoy. You're
Gonna have to
welcome.
Hear that
Aim until it's
henceforth and
not.
forevermore.
The bottom line is that the city will see a net gain off of these efforts. The initial cost will be about $390,000, which is budgeted for in this year's budget. We anticipate that will be paid back over the course of about 2 years, maybe less. And then we would see 3 years of just pure, what you could call profit, I suppose, but
Net
additional
revenue.
revenue. Yeah, net revenue. Amendment for.
We need to do a budget amendment to
yes.
include the 391
Yes.
in this current fiscal year's budget. That is planned for.
We can get into the details, but really all we're looking for is just your nod to go ahead and proceed with it. So if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but otherwise.
Questions for Matthew? Otherwise, we're looking for a resolution.
Move to resolution.
And legal counsel has reviewed this agreement with the Census Bureau specifically.
Any further discussion? We've got the motion in second.
Your Honor, I mentioned this has been covered by the Register and some other media outlets, and I'll make sure that we update their list so that Clive is noted as one of the other communities going after a special census.
Very good. Would the council please vote, and would the clerk please post that vote? And that passes with 4 affirmative votes. Now we move into our discussion items, starting with the Hickman interchange update. Jeff.
Mayor, council, good evening. Tonight, we're here to talk about the I-3580 interchange, give you an update on that, as well as talks about some options we have for the Northwest 108th intersection as relates to signalization in relation to the actual interchange project and potential options for the frontage road as it relates to the Northwest 108th Street signalization there. So with us tonight is Nate Carhoff from Snyder Associates. I know Nate's been here before. He's here to give us the brunt of the update and proceed with our discussion.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for the introduction. Good evening. Hello again. Is the presentation pulled up by chance?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, you just flip it over.
No, it's not.
That's
The budget.
I missed the Dylan announcement, on Tuesday. I was in the office.
Oh, I got you.
February, and I came. I was like, "Oh, you got done with this month of business?" I've been official
That
since
looks
Friday. I'm like, okay.
We started on Monday.
Yeah.
That's what-
Oh, well, save it then.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Pete. Real quick, if I move my mouse on this screen, do you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Last time I was here was about 18 months ago, August of 2022. At that time, we were kind of at the final stages of wrapping up the concept for what we're calling the project enhancements. And those include aesthetics, landscaping, stormwater management, enhanced pedestrian accommodations. And at the time, we were also looking at access management and land use planning. This is a graphic that was displayed during that meeting. So tonight, what I'd like to do is provide a brief update on, fast forward 18 months where we're at right now, which is very close to turning in final plans for the first major bid package. The next several slides will just be a series of images that kind of highlight and showcase the final concept for the aesthetics and landscaping package. This is an aerial view looking north at the interchange itself. You can see if you go from right to left, the grade separated pedestrian improvements with bridge over the ramp, travels down to a tunnel underneath the interstate, bridge over the other ramp, and there'll be subsequent images later, but it continues westerly and then actually crosses underneath Hickman as well.
Hey, Nate, before you move on from that, sorry, but I'm not familiar enough with the Urbandale side. On the far east side of the pedestrian, does that connect to a trail system or where does that go to?
So with this project, it will end at just east of 111th. City of Urbandale has in their CIP for next year or the year after, they will continue that trail down to Northwest 100th Street.
Okay.
And
So
their goal is to
basically just in
continue it
front of
further
Hickman?
east. Yeah, their goal is to continue it further east, even to 86th Street. Part of the challenge is how they get underneath the railroad bridge that crosses Hickman, but their goal is to continue it on the north side of Hickman.
And the east side of 100th and Urbandale now does have that 8-foot trail
It comes down.
that comes down from the north. So there's the
But
connectivity.
does it at any point connect into their trail system, like over by their city hall and all of that?
If they get to 86th Street, then they would.
Yeah.
Eventually, because then it goes up north. their city halls
Loosely
off of
for
86th Street.
sidewalks.
Yeah,
Yeah, loosely, you're gonna come north of Hickman and 86, and then you'll drop down into their park down there by the creek.
Mhm.
But sidewalk all.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just sidewalk.
but they're trying to take the sidewalks that they have today and expand them where they can to the trail width.
But the trail width is already present at 100th Street in Urbandale.
Yes.
Oh, it's fine. This next image is also an aerial view. This is looking southeast. Again, this shows the pedestrian improvements, also shows the tunnel underneath Hickman and the trail that connects down to the existing Clive Greenbelt Trail near Walnut Creek. With the aerial images, you can kind of get an overview of what we're planning for, some vertical elements within what we're calling these islet medians, as well as some plantings and landscaping within the diamond-shaped islands or medians, and then some low-maintenance plantings within the interchange infields. Again, just another aerial view. This one's looking northwest, so the Lifetime Fitness area would be in the kind of the background of this image. And the last aerial image again shows that tunnel underneath Hickman. I do need to apologize. This got a little grainy when I compressed the images to make the file size small enough. This didn't turn out so well. So, but again, showcasing vertical elements within the medians as well as the trail and the plantings. The next several slides will be a view as if you were driving the corridor. So this would be on the west side of the interchange on Hickman looking east. Kind of a closer view of those vertical elements that are planned for the median, as well as some the landscaping, plantings, and the grading of those islands. This would be an image as if you were coming off the southbound exit ramp at the interchange, looking underneath the bridge. And the next image after that is the kind of the opposite side. If you were on the northbound exit ramp, you can see the vertical elements proposed for the median underneath the bridge. These elements kind of pull double duty in this case. They enhance the aesthetic of the corridor, and it also helps to block headlights for nighttime travel. The way the ramps are aligned at those at the stop bars, they are traffic. Your headlights are pointing directly at the opposite ramp.
This
So-
is northbound exit looking west
Yeah, north.
towards Menards. And you're on the left lane instead of the, right, I mean,
Right.
that's the whole switch.
Yeah. So these will help block those headlights. Closer view of those that also show gives you a feel for the colored concrete that's going in on the median. MSC walls that are required for the bridge construction will be enhanced with some aesthetic motifs, if you will. We have a wave pattern along the bottom. Although throughout many meetings, we've discussed whether those are waves or hills. It's really up to you to determine what you think they are.
A lot of discussion.
Yeah, are you set on those?
What's the point of those? Just out of curiosity.
It ties in, so the overall theme is tying everything in with Walnut Creek and the walnut tree. It's a theme that is used in both the city of Clive and the city of Urbandale throughout
Our brands.
your branding policy.
Colors waves for us, the walnut.
I don't care enough to argue with it, but
I don't think of waves when I think of Clive.
the
but that's-
leaf, well, what
that's
I,
just me.
what I say is, are we ready for a flood is what I'd say on that. I mean, the leaves of the police station, firehouse is cool, but you know, when you come in and the trees, but anyways, I do think of a flood when I see that.
Well, hopefully it never floods this high.
Right, I agree.
Well, our logo also has the wave.
And we also flood, so.
See, there you go.
It may not show up too well on your screen because of the way we did the lighting with the rendering, but there is the leaf embellishment in many of the MSC wall panels.
Our idea behind that too is really to chop up that big vertical MSC wall to kind of give it some interest, something different. These are form liners. Yes, it adds some cost to the project, but our feeling is how do we break up that visual a little bit from being just a massive concrete wall?
This image shows if you were entering the northbound entrance ramp. It shows the pedestrian bridge over the ramp. The wall directly in front of the screen is an MSC style wall, so it'll have the same or similar aesthetics as the wall that we just saw underneath the Hickman Bridge. The wall that's shown on the right-hand side is a different style wall. It has a different construction method. It's a soil nail wall. And the way it's constructed, we are proposing a form liner for that has a kind of a grass pattern. It kind of ties in with other themes throughout the corridor. This view would be if you were taking the southbound exit ramp, again, showcasing the pedestrian bridges over the ramp. And then the last couple images here show the view from a pedestrian perspective. This view would be if you were just crossing over the first bridge of the northbound exit ramp and travel on your way towards the tunnel underneath the interstate.
So are all these like street lamps and the walking lamps, are those the actual what we're looking at? Because those are more decorative and I know a lot more expensive than typical, just the standard kind of stainless steel ones or what?
That is the style we're going with.
Okay.
The traffic signals will also be painted black, and all of the lights will have the black metal theme to it.
And well, where does that end then on Hickman Road? Is it just in the interchange?
It'll be just at the interchange. So the traffic signals that are at Lifetime Fitness entrance right there, those will be kind of the end. Be got your normal signals. You get into the interchange itself, they'll all be the enhanced with the black paint. And then Northwest 111th, we're going back to the normal, right?
I believe that's.
Yeah. So it's just the interchange itself. And then the final image is if you were walking into the tunnel that goes underneath Hickman Road. There's also a soil nail wall that is needed for that due to the presence of existing utilities that could not be relocated. This gives you a kind of a better feel for the form liner that's being proposed for that wall.
Is there any planned insulation for that tunnel underneath with, like I can imagine cars passing over because that's the on-ramp, right?
This is Hickman Road here.
Hickman Road, okay.
Still a lot of cars.
Yeah,
for sure.
so, I mean, is that kind of, is there any concern about noise levels during, like somebody's whizzing by above?
We have not taken into account noise or noise levels with the tunnels. They will sound very similar to every other tunnel. There's really not much we can do, to be honest, but it has not been factored in though.
I'm assuming though there's some level of slope so that there's water runoff, that we don't have like standing water or hopefully ice puddles and.
Correct. We have taken some steps to try to keep these as dry as possible. So the tunnel underneath the interstate has a double crown. So starting in the middle of the interstate, it slopes to the outside. And then the trail itself will have a crown section that will, if any water infiltrates into the tunnel, it would go to the edges. And we're also proposing a little bit more advanced waterproofing of the joints. This will be a cast in place structure, so there'll be less joints and help reduce that versus a lot of times tunnels go in as precast. They go in faster and sometimes less expensive, but there's a heck of a lot more joints to seal and a lot more chance for leakage. Throughout the design process, it was very clear that keeping these as dry as possible was a high priority. Any other comments or questions on the kind of the aesthetics, landscaping?
It sounds like regardless if we do, it's a done deal. It sounds like regardless if we have input, this thing's a done deal, right? Because
Not yet.
we mentioned the lights and the river and the flooding, and it sounds like it's all set.
Well, the interchange is set.
Yeah, and the lighting and the.
Yes, But as far as this, the aesthetics package that the cities are paying for, it's not done until it's built, so.
Or before it's bid, right? Because once we bid, we don't.
Yeah.
we Certainly don't want to change it.
The second kind of major piece of the project enhancements is stormwater management. And for this project, we're proposing kind of three major treatment options. One is bioswales and bioretention, kind of shown in that diagram in the upper right. It includes installation of layers of rock and soil and planting materials that capture, treat, and infiltrate water. The second major practice we're implementing is regenerative conveyance, and that is kind of shown in this diagram here. It's a series of step-down pools that slow down the water, pool it up, and allow it to be treated and infiltrated. And the third major practice we are using will be dry detention basin at two dry detention basins at the Douglas interchange. This image shows the infield of one of those ramps. And that image is courtesy of Google Street View. I forgot to cite my source on that. So kind of going through the corridor on the interstate, we'll be installing, this is at just north of the University Avenue interchange. These are the entrance and exit ramps. Regenerative conveyance will be installed within the ramp and interstate ditches.
So are we going to be reducing traffic at all for that work off the university exit ramp, or is there any impact?
No traffic impact.
Okay.
This is all taking the ditching that's needed for the interstate and kind of repurposing it a little bit, shaping it a little bit differently to install those stormwater features.
Okay. Will there be any impact to the greenbelt then for this work?
No.
There will be some impacts to the trail.
Well, there's impacts for other purposes, but
Yes, yeah,
not for the stormwater management.
One thing I wanted to note too, as as Nate goes through the stormwater impacts, this is something that we're very happy with at the DOT. There were a lot of discussions on this of the DOT allowing us to do stormwater management within the DOT right away. So our friends in West Des Moines kind of broke that open with the work that you've seen along 235 in front of West Bank, because that's in the DOT right away. So we kind of took that and said, well, hey, if you're starting to do that, we want to do something similar here at Hickman. And so and Nate can confirm this, working on a lot of state projects, that these aren't things that the DOT typically agrees to. Now, of course, that puts the cities on the hook for, maintaining some of these improvements, or a good majority of these improvements. But it is good to see that the DOT is now getting to a point where they're allowing these practices, because you got a lot of green space in the gaps here, in between lanes, that it's just really good green space to use for stormwater management. And we've got quite a bit in this project, which is great.
So what West Des Moines doing along 235, is that what we're going to see here? Or-
Nothing that extensive.
No,
My point there is that's actually in the 235 DOT right away
Sure.
to doing stormwater management like that, which the DOT historically has not been supportive of. But they did start to allow that with that project. And then we said, okay, well, if you're going to do it in the DOT right away there, we want to allow work in the right of way for stormwater management here. And they agreed to that.
These type-
Set that precedent that basically allowed us to piggyback off that, Matt, would you?
Basically, yeah.
A lot of the improvements along the interstate, you probably won't see.
Okay.
You'll be driving too fast and they're down in the ditch.
Gotcha.
Sorry, this slide, again, we're just kind of moving through the corridor north again. Regenerative conveyance within the ditches, kind of right outside this building here. As we get to the interchange itself with Hickman, we switch practices due to some other constraints. The ditches along the ramps are slated for bioswales. And then within the median, I guess the diamond medians of the interchange, there will be bioretention cells installed within those, shown in the green and blue here, and here.
Does the DOT need a little bit more of that land down here on the bottom and past the green line? Maybe half of that could go over to the road use?
This here?
Yeah.
No, I don't think we're acquiring any right of way
Oh, no,
there.
that, not
Other side, Doug, is that?
the love.
On the Love side, yeah, they are doing acquisition of a portion of.
Half of it?
No, not quite.
On that note, the portion being acquired by DOT has been finalized. And if you'd like to pick on Jeff, he can talk to a little bit more about the city's acquisition.
Yeah,
on that
we,
parcel as well.
outside of the DOT right away, there's a small portion for that trail segment to come down. The DOT isn't in the business of acquiring right away for trail, so that was on us to do ourselves. And Jeff's been in conversation with Loves, and we're at a point where they are interested in looking at selling out small strip to us for that trail connection. And so we're finalizing, we got some agreements to put together, but we're hopeful that that does not require a condemnation hearing or discussion, that we can acquire that voluntarily. But that was the one piece of right of way out of this whole project that a city had to take on outside of the DOT requirements. Now they need some of it for construction easement purposes, but not permanent easement, so we had to acquire it.
Further north at the Douglas interchange, as I mentioned, we're proposing those dry detention basins. Outlet structures will be installed on the existing pipes, which will hold back that water. What is shown here in the red is the anticipated surface area that is detained with the 100-year storm. And then finally, over at Northwest 111th and Hickman, we're proposing, or we'll be installing some soil quality restoration. And what that involves is just increasing the organic content of the soil. Again, helps to treat and infiltrate stormwater. Sorry, any other questions on stormwater before we move on? Want to talk construction phasing and schedule. It's a fairly complicated project. Staging wise, we have what's shown here is kind of the three major phases of the project. The first package that is going out for letting in July of this year is shown in blue. It includes the bulk of the exterior work on the interstate as well as Hickman, widening of the Walnut Creek bridges, and partial reconstruction of the Hickman bridges. The second major phase will be let in July of 2025, and that's shown in red. And that will kind of complete the reconstruction of the interstate portion. And then the third and final major stage is what's shown in orange there, which is the bulk of the work on Hickman itself and at the work at 111th Street intersection. So taking phase one, I'd like to kind of go through the current breakdown of that phase into the various stages that we have. If you squint really, really hard, you'll see tiny little blue dots for our stage one. Stage one is going to involve work within the median to install footings for the eventual overhead sign trusses, as well as some geotech work outside of the lanes in preparation for bridge construction.
So phase one is not impacting traffic then at that point.
There will be median and exterior shoulder closures, but generally speaking, it shouldn't affect too much.
And that's 2025.
This work is anticipated to happen later this fall.
Oh, in 2024.
Yeah.
Okay.
The second stage of the project involves exterior work on the interstate, widening of the Walnut Creek bridges, and some exterior work on Hickman between University and Hickman. During this stage, these ramps will be closed and detoured for the duration of the stage.
Which ramp?
All of them. So this first phase of the project is the biggest, it's a massive amount of work to get done. And we are requiring the contractor about 18 months to get it done. Previously, we had broken this up into a lot smaller stages to keep as many ramps open as possible at a time. And that proved to be, that was going to increase the schedule by quite a bit. So working with DOT district staff, we have redone the staging down to what's being presented tonight. Earlier in January, we met with first responders and got their input on how they would, some requirements that we need to take into account for when they're responding to incidents on the interstate. The third,
So, hold on,
sorry,
just before you go to this next slide, so that looks like the blue lines impact the southbound entrance off Hickman, the northbound exit off of the highway onto University, and then the opposite entrance and exit.
correct.
So, I mean, you're talking about half the interchanges in Clive.
So the Hickman southbound entrance and exit will be closed at the same time, and then similarly northbound. Yeah.
What about the University Avenue? It looks like that's got
Yeah.
blue line too.
Correct, yes,
So those are closed also?
yes.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
I did not realize
That's
that.
18 months.
No, we would anticipate this would be in the 3 to 4 month timeframe. With, well, probably more like 6 months, actually.
Basically, the two interchanges will function like one interchange rather than two. That's
Yeah,
fair
but
to say.
that-
You'll have the north half of Hickman and the south half of University.
No, I get that, but that southbound entrance, like the, I-35 south entrance off of University, that's already with 235 right there. That's already I don't know what the technical term for it is. I can come up with another name for it.
Cluster?
Yeah. So, I mean, that concerns me. I mean, I know there's not a whole lot we can do, but. I mean,
And when
This
does
is
it,
closed.
when is this
This
starting?
one's open, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's.
So
That's not this fall, that's next.
Nate, this
year,
will,
right?
this probably be 25 work.
Correct.
Yeah, this will be 2025.
This ramp, the loop ramp, so University to southbound
Right,
stays
right.
open.
I know that
stays
stays
open.
open, but with the influx of traffic that's gonna be detoured to that, it's already kind of a mess. in
So that
Times.
are the official detour for this will be taking traffic to 128th Street up to Douglas and down.
Great.
We realized that loop ramp is,
Up to Douglas. Yeah, that's true.
yeah. So the official detour route does not use the loop ramp.
I can help you.
This is part of the reason with our arterial patching program why we focused on 128th and University, because we know it's going to be a detour route for what you're seeing here. They'll be both the Douglas direction and the University direction potentially.
We will only be signing up to Douglas.
Up to Douglas for this phase, but the
Correct.
next phase will
But-
change that.
And let's be honest, I mean, I know we're gonna have detour signs, but the people that live here, I'm not going up to Douglas. I'm going down to University.
The hope would be that you see how terrible it gets and you go to Douglas.
That's the hope.
And just stay home, right?
People-
This is part of why staff has shared, and Snyder has heard this, and our first responders have also shared with the DOT. They gotta have a good communications plan, and I'm not convinced at all that they have that yet.
Who's that?
The DOT
Oh,
in District 1, in terms of, they know it's coming, and Jeff, Pete, myself on some of these calls have said to the district staff or the DOT, the head office is, what is going to be the communications plan? Because
Well, can we offset some of that and not just be relying on the DOT and use?
no,
some of our
we're
communications?
going to definitely do that, but part of what our hesitation is we want to have something authoritative to point to that has regular updates on where things are at. And because, yeah, we're definitely going to be supplementing it ourselves for sure. But we need the DOT to be in the lead on that, to have good timely information, because we can't produce that in terms of what the contractor is telling them. So those are some things that we're working on in the background too, still.
Yeah,
push everything to Weaver's Facebook.
Well, can you tell there's some concern over here who happens to live right there? Well, so does Matt, so.
I live and work with right next to all.
Please
so.
forget this guy over here.
Yeah, well, true, that's true, Pete, too.
I'm gonna ride my bike.
Yeah. That's a good point.
You won't be able to take the green belt during this phase.
But you can take Douglas or University.
That's right.
All joking aside, the communication plan is really important. DOT is working on, it's not final yet. They're working on putting together a major projects website. The way we talked at the first responders meeting is it seems to be appropriate that it'd be a point person at DOT. Probably the RCE, or the RCE's office that's communicating directly with the contractor. That would be one point. Then it goes to a group of someone responsible for first responders and the cities. And then the cities would then disseminate that information however you guys choose to, through social media or
Every means that we have.
other means, yes.
So this would be spring 25 work.
Correct, yes.
So most of the 25 construction season.
Yeah.
Would be this, right?
There'll be work this fall in 24, but it's gonna be,
That minimal stuff.
yeah, stuff you won't impact
Ramps.
as much. Yeah, exactly. The third stage is getting the walls and the bridges done at Hickman. This is likely to be built concurrent with the previous phase.
So
Stage,
will Hickman stay open during that time?
so once during this phase, yes, the southbound and southbound exit, northbound entrance, the north ramps will remain open.
And will the highway just be down to one lane on each side then? Is that the way it'll work? Or
Has
is
to be
it
two.
closing?
Has to be.
Three lanes of traffic on the interstate will be maintained at all times.
Okay. All right.
Stage 4 is very similar to the second stage with its exterior work on the interstate. And then stage 5 is at Douglas and to the north. Now that I went through all of that, as of yesterday, we are making some changes to this staging plan. With the, we've been reviewing how traffic operates on the interstate, and some of these stages may get flipped. And what I'd like to do is update these slides for you guys within the coming days and get those out to maybe to you, Matt, and you can distribute those. But what we're looking at doing is flipping this stage 5 with one of the pieces of stage 2. And what that'll allow us to do is maintain traffic on the interstate more efficiently. So again, that is a very recent development as of yesterday morning.
Would it be fair to say, Nate, that for all of these phases, that's probably going into 20, all the way through 26?
Certainly through 25 and hopefully wrapping up by spring of 26. Because by the spring of 26, we need to be
Build the bridges.
working on the second phase with the interior work.
Interior bridges and over Hickman.
But we think the interchanges will be shut down for about 6 months, is what you said. Is that correct?
For
The
phase
ramps.
one.
Ramps, yeah,
Right.
through different stages.
And then there's another shutdown there for stage 4.
Yeah, so stage, the two major ones, 2 and 4, that's about 6 months of work each. So you're looking at a year's worth of inconvenience.
But they can't be shut down at the same time.
We are not allowed to shut down consecutive entrances or exits at the same time. That was a very strong recommendation from first responders last month. Once we get this staging plan final, we do plan to meet with them again sometime in March or early April to get more feedback on the current staging plan, and then we can implement any changes before the bids go out.
And for the council's benefit, you can tell me if I'm wrong here, Nate, you can go back to your full staging slide. That shows all three phases. When we get to phase 3 in Hickman, there will be a portion, was it 60 days? We're hoping maybe less. That Hickman will be completely closed through because we have to do the work. They have to do the work underneath the bridges, right?
Correct.
That'd be phase 3,
It's likely probably more like 90 days.
90 days. See, it's gone up. I thought it was 45 days. And then it went to 60, now it's 90. But
that's
there, where you saw where the colored concrete was and all that, like
Yeah.
at some point, the full east-west is gonna
That's
be,
mostly
but by
correct.
that point, all the ramps will be open
You'll be able
on
to,
and off.
yeah, you'll
You
be
won't
able
go
to,
through.
yeah, through traffic. So
That's most likely in 2025.
Well, that's like 27.
27,
Oh, that's 27.
27.
Uh, That's a huge one for first responders though, because Hickman's our thoroughfare with, so there will be changes, and Chief Garcia and I have already been talking about, there'll be changes that we'll have to make. And this is part of the communications plan and that contact point for the DOT, because the most important thing for us is making sure Westcom is aware and we're adjusting the CAD, the computer aided dispatch. If depending on how we reroute, if there's a fire call or an EMS call, rerouting assets. And so when, for example, when we get to phase 3 and that's cut off at Hickman, the response area, you know, our closest unit response we have with Urbandale is going to be really important, because the station, our station 32 will take a lot longer for them to go west of the interstate on Hickman, whereas 42 and 43 will be a lot closer for certain calls. And so we have to adjust, and we can do that pretty quickly. You know, our CAD is set up to do that, but it's about knowing and not being like last minute surprised by a contractor that, okay, in a week, I'm going to close down this, whatever, because we have to set those things up for public safety response.
And Nate, if you're gonna get to this, I can hold, but are you gonna talk about the Greenbelt and the impact of that and when that'll be closed? And
So, yeah, I can talk about that tonight. I don't have a specific slide on it. So during construction of the bridge, installation of the substructure, there's also a massive amount of rock that is being installed to, as a scour countermeasure. There's about 700 trucks of rock that needs to come in there. During that initial phase, it's just not safe to continue to have that open. So it will be closed until the substructure is done and the trail is put back. What we're looking at doing then is, once that's complete, there can be some pedestrian protection installed. If you've ever been to a, downtown Chicago does it all the time. It's like a scaffolding with plywood on top, 2x4.
They did it on West Des Moines along the Jordan Trail.
Yeah.
When the DOT was doing those bridges over the interstate, they did that same kind of protection over the trail.
So once the substructure is done, it can be opened back up with pedestrian protection, because then all that's left to do is the superstructure, setting steel for the deck and pouring the deck. Sometimes that deck pour can take a while, so we're going to implement that kind of substage to open that trail back up as soon as possible.
so when, where, and how long? Is it like behind Menards kind of area or
So it'll be closed over 128th
128?
and closed at
128.
Yeah, that seems really far.
That's really far west.
That's on the north side of the green belt. That's the first outlet. if you-
Campbell Park, it would be, yeah, you wouldn't be able to go east of Campbell.
Oh, sorry. Well, I guess I'm talking about as it continues further west, we want to catch people at 128th. There'll be probably some, we'll need
Basically,
to,
Talking the
Campbell
detour,
Park.
you're talking
Yeah.
the detour.
Yeah.
So basically from Campbell Park over to City Hall, or
Right, so that stretch that goes underneath the interstate bridges is what
Yeah.
he's talking about.
Yeah.
So, but it would just be the stretch underneath the bridges.
correct.
That will be, but you can't go anywhere. Pretty much Campbell Park, City Hall. To go in between there, that's where it's gonna be
Right.
closed.
so when and for how long do we, just estimated?
It'd be spring of 25,
5,
probably for 6 months.
That's
The whole
pretty
summer,
much the
basically.
whole-
Most of
yeah,
the
that's
riding
whole
season in 25.
And am I correct? Then the detour would take you south along 128th over to Westtown Parkway to then move east and then come back down 114th and Car Park to rejoin?
I think we were planning, so that's the regional trail route. We need to use regional trails. I think we were planning to go up to Douglas to 100th and down. But we can explore others if there's a better.
Yeah, we've been
better
talking about
routes.
detour routes.
Certainly, we're open to,
Yeah, And is it full, is it the full 6 months though? Because if this, once the substructure is in place, then,
There's a lot of work to get done with the substructure.
yeah.
And then we could open it up in the fall while they're doing the bridge deck.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So it might not be that full phase time period. Our hope is it isn't.
Yeah, better to set the expectation that it will and then come in.
6
early.
months, yeah, that's why we say 6 months, but yeah.
If I could, not to bring more salt to our wound here. We keep in mind, there'll be other things happening in the green belt that'll disrupt trail access in these sort of broad time frame as well.
You talking about like out west?
It's the WRA sewer.
Oh, right.
That'll be happening also in 25
Yep.
at the same time. So it's actually convenient to have them timed at the same time because if you go, so just on the west edge, just south of Menards is where the WRA phase of the sewer, parallel sewer construction will be, and then going west. So there'll be a portion of that trail that would have to be closed for that sewer crossing anyway. We're gonna get into more details on the WRA sewer, but it's actually timing it pretty good because it's gonna have to be closed for the interchange anyway and the sewer at the same time. But what will be nice is after 25, then at least west of the interstate west, it shouldn't be as impacted. But then you'll still have the WRA sewer in 26, 27 that will eventually come back up to this point.
The WRA sewer starts just behind Menards to stay out of conflict with the work going on here. So then when they come back, phase one starts at that point and goes west. Phase two goes clear down to the east end. So phase three would be to come back in here in probably 2 or 3 years and have to work between 114th and the back of Menards, and it would probably be closed again during that stretch of time. So we don't have the details, but we just got today alignment for phase one. So got a lot to talk about there.
So we probably will have trail that's gonna get rebuilt twice. The DOT will rebuild it once, and the WRA will have to rebuild it a second time.
I don't know about DOT, but WRA is doing the best they can.
Good to know.
Other comments, concerns on staging schedule?
Where do I start?
With a large, complicated project comes a large, complicated cost opinion as well. Realize there's a bunch of tiny little numbers on there. I left it in this state to kind of show the complexity of how we've broken this out into many, many different bid packages. The bottom line, the bold, larger numbers at the bottom, the overall total project is estimated to cost $118 million, with a little over 9.7 of that being allocated to local jurisdictions, AKA City of Clive, City of Urbandale, with DOT being responsible for the remaining 108.5 million.
Am I reading this right? That roughly 5.5 million is for the pavement decorations for the local jurisdiction?
So the description in here, and Jeff and I had this conversation after I put this slide together. The description is straight out of the DOT system. That's the work code, if you will. The bulk of that $3 million is going to be the pedestrian bridges,
Okay,
and trail and tunnels. There's not any actual pavement, interstate pavement. The cities aren't paying for that. That's just what the package, the parent 264, this number over here, that is the work code in the DOT system.
so
So
what's the second one, the other PCC pavement?
so this down here, would
Yep.
the one on Hickman, that 2 million is associated with, again, some more of the MSE wall. It's all landscape and aesthetics and
So
finishing up pedestrian
So
improvements.
that 2 million is the aesthetics on the walls.
Floodways.
Well, not exactly. I think a better way of thinking of it would be the 9.7 million is everything to do with stormwater management, the pedestrian improvements, and the aesthetics and landscaping.
Well,
But I just want to get a sense of how much the,
You're lumping it in. I think he's asking specifically, how much does this add to the project?
right, like the MSC decorative walls essentially.
It's a very small number in the grand scheme of that 9.7 million. Just the form liner, like the decoration form liner.
Right, right, yeah.
I mean, that's a very, very small number.
As, for example, the soil nail wall as needed for the walls that are needed for the interstate, we were talking 5% of that cost is then associated with enhancing those panels with the pattern and the colored concrete. But
I get 5% is.
5% of a big number is still a big number, yes.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
To pay for those costs associated with the local jurisdictions, there's been several funding opportunities that have been applied for and or will be applied for. Thus far, the State Transportation Block Grant Program, State Rec Trail, Resource Enhancement and Protection, or REAP, Federal Rec Trail, and the TAZA money, or Transportation Alternative Set Aside. That is the new acronym for TAP, if you've heard TAP before. As well as Water Quality Initiative have been applied for. So far, the project has been awarded $2.5 million for this STBG. Unfortunately, we were not successful with the State Rec Trail, Federal Rec Trail, or REAP. The project did score quite well. For example, the State Rec Trail program funded 7 projects, and this project ranked 8th. So it scored quite well, but not quite well enough to get into the funding. The REAP money, they made a note that this project would have been funded had the legislature fully funded the REAP program. This project ranked 10th, they funded 9 projects. So the Transportation Alternative Set Aside Program, we've applied for $1 million for that. Those announcements will be made in March. This week, we got a bit of good news. This project has been selected for funding through Water Quality Initiative. So that money will be used to pay for the stormwater management aspects that we talked about. And the email was a little cryptic. It didn't have the dollar amount in it.
It was $279,500 is what it
Okay.
was. It was spread over 2 different years. But that was.
Okay, so the email that I read, the way I read it was like they were gonna enter into some negotiations on the funding amount, but so almost 280,000 has been awarded for that. Later this week, as in tomorrow, we'll be submitting a RAISE grant application. And then later this year, we'll be looking at applying for the Traffic Safety Improvement Program, Iowa Clean Air Attainment Program, and Urban State Traffic Engineering Program. So the TSIP, ICAP, and USTEP acronyms there.
On the consent agenda tonight, you approved the RAISE grant application. That's the big swing that we're going after. Been securing, Pete, myself, and a number of others have been securing a lot of letters of support for that. And Urbandale, we're working with Snyder on that grant application, and we're nearing the end of the finish line. That's a very competitive process. But we think we've got a lot of elements with this project to be competitive in that process. But that would essentially, if we're able to secure that or a portion of that, depending on how large that portion is, the DOT would take over that grant and, for lack of a better phrase, kind of wipe the city's slate clean in terms of our obligation, is our intent with going after this RAISE grant application. Again, it's a very competitive program, but this is our big swing out of the list that you see here, obviously, by the dollar amount. That's almost a minimum, basically, that the 25 million is a minimum ask in that program.
Further down the list, there's some smaller programs associated with plant materials. And then I left it on the list, but the CAT grant, or Community Attraction and Tourism, that's a little bit of a long shot. But depending on how these others shake out, that may or may not be applied for. With that, Jeff, you're okay. I'll give a brief intro. I'll tee it up for you.
Oh, you tee it up. I'll
Okay.
tee it up for you.
Oh. So on a separate but related topic is the intersection with 108th, 111th, and the frontage road. The third phase of the project, that the orange shape we talked about, that will require access. It will restrict access to the businesses on the north at 111th Street. which will require a detour down to the 108th Street intersection to use the private road back to Living History Farms and Heart of America Group properties. That will require a temporary signal to be installed at the intersection for protected left turns. When once a intersection is signalized, whether that be in a temporary or permanent manner, it's extremely difficult to take those signals away without safety implications. So what we've done is looked at traffic signal warrants for the 108th Street project. And we've analyzed that intersection with two options in mind. One being if the frontage road and 111th Street, that intersection remains the same as it is today. And a second analysis was performed if that were to close. So the connection of the frontage road to 111th would be shut off, therefore forcing folks to use the frontage road to get to 108th to turn left onto Hickman. The analysis shows that with the frontage road open as it is today, we technically do not meet warrants. There's like a total of 2 vehicles per hour that we don't meet the requirements. However, if the frontage road is closed, it meets warrants quite easily. So and let me know when you want to jump in, Jeff.
If I could real quick,
Yes,
let me
please.
just jump in right here. There's a couple things, and where's the back slide? You see 2 columns here. This column here is met and it says yes, but that's based on raw traffic numbers. The state requires the Ohio DOT reduction in order to consider them. So after they apply them, we didn't meet them in any of these. So that's why you see yeses here. It looks like we met it, and why you see all no's here. It's because the requirement of meeting warrants for the Iowa DOT is based on the Ohio reduction number.
Yeah, so that reduction, what it does is it takes into account folks that come up to an intersection and turn right. They're not waiting there for a left turn. So it reduces the amount of traffic at the intersection by a certain factor. And once that's applied, as you can see, it doesn't meet the warrants.
And when you dig down into the data, and I didn't include it because it's about that thick. One warrant, you had to have a certain volume of cars for 8 hours in a day. We had 7, and in 3 other hours, we were 2 cars short in that hour. So technically, we could probably push it and get with or without that intersection being closed. So
Your no 3s and your blank 1s correspond with the bottom 1s and 2s, or is there a 3 I should be seeing?
That's a great, there's a 3, tiny little 3 right there.
Right.
That's what Jeff was talking about. We
I
missed
see.
it by that 2 vehicles per
Okay.
hour.
Yep.
So I guess I'm just not totally following. You're proposing that we may need to close the frontage road? I mean, how would the businesses along there?
And that's what we want to talk about here in a second. And what I want to say is, we did reach out to the businesses that might be impacted. I got the response the day after I submitted everything for your packet, and I'll let you know what they've said here. Pass these around. There's the responses from the business owner. One of the business owners, as you might expect, it's going to look, they're not in favor of it. So basically,
Starbucks folks aren't too happy if we would close. the
Oh, yeah,
frontage road.
Genesis right there as well.
Genesis was contacted, have not heard back from them, as well as the other 2 buildings on the corner have not heard back from them yet. Assume I will at some point, and we did engage them and reach out to them. So just want to let you know that.
Nail
But-
salon.
Yeah, the nail salon on the south, and then the
Dentist.
Subway building. So anyway, the question is, one, is there interest in signalizing the northwest 108th intersection permanently? There's some advantages to doing it now. There is a U-step grant available. If we close the frontage road, and I'm not saying we should, I'm just saying if we did close it, there's potential to get another 200,000 because it would go to a linear type project. In addition, if the DOT does not have to put in the temporary signals for this project, they might throw in an extra $40,000-$50,000 to help offset the cost. So bring it to you at this time to discuss that option if we want to proceed with signalization of this intersection. I'm not here to say that the only way we can get it signalized is if we close the road, because I think there's still an option to possibly pursue that without closing the road. But we also know we've had issues at that intersection. It's not the greatest layout. It does perform a function. And so I'll let Nate talk about some of this.
So as part of the analysis, we looked at travel time impacts to get from these locations. It might be a little washed out here, but location A, location B, location C. So if you were in this parking lot, you exited, used the frontage road and got out and went left on Hickman. In the AM peak, we're looking at, so sorry, if that's your normal route to get out of there, you would then be required to go east on the frontage road down to 108th, turn left onto Hickman. And the time impacts are shown in the table at the bottom. So during the AM peak, we're looking at, about a 10-second, 11-second impact or additional time at point A, and about 25-second impact in the PM peak for point A. And then as you go to the other driveways further east, that impact gets considerably less and actually gets improved as you get closer to 108th, which that's kind of intuitive.
How do you even do that impact study? Because if you go left and you go to 111th, you sit there for 10 minutes until you can get a spot to
Right.
get in. So how
Yeah.
are you
Hard to get
rating
out
this on numbers? Is that just perfect condition? I can go out and take a right?
No, it factors in the traffic. So during AM and PM peaks, we factored in the traffic at the intersection. And there's some factors that, you're at the mercy of the courtesy of the people to let you in. So that has been accounted for to the best we can. It's not going to be perfect.
And
It's a model, it's a traffic model.
And I know closing this frontage road is predicated on having a signal at 108th, but if the frontage road stays open and we're just talking about the signal at Northwest 108th, there's already a signal pretty close. Like I know it's just off
Right.
to the right on the screen. Yeah.
104th, yeah. So we've looked at the spacing and it does meet this typical signalized intersection spacing through the whole corridor. It's also part of the access management agreement for the corridor that was set, oh my gosh, what was that?
We
2003.
need to rework.
We're in the process of updating it.
But that previous agreement sets the major intersections that when they meet warrants would be signalized. So 108th is at that proper spacing.
Essentially, we're trying to take advantage of, there's going to need to be temporary signals put in there, money spent on that. And we approach the DOT of, hey, what if we just put that money towards permanent signals? And then we introduce this idea of, okay, the frontage road connection there has always been very wonky for a long time. Of course, you see, we reached out to those property owners. We knew the retailers would not be supportive of it. Right at that corner, Starbucks, Subway, and of course there's measures that they could take if we were to cut that off, that they would claim, reduction in property value, a whole host of things that is potential, risk. And so what we're kind of getting at is we feel like there's still validity to the 108th signalization, but I don't think we're ready to say at this point that cutting off the frontage road would be, we want to study a little bit more in terms of traffic counts between that driveway that goes into the subway right there and the frontage road. But we know that there's going to definitely be a viewpoint from that retail center that this is a negative for them.
But doesn't that argument go both ways? If you put a signal in 108th, it's going to increase their values, increase the abilities to go left and right. The ease is left and right. So should we assess them for that? They can't have it both ways.
I don't think they would see the 108th traffic signal as helpful to them.
Oh, huge. You can't go out there and go left without a prayer and floor it.
Well, I think you're looking at,
Flyovers. It's the same.
Right.
I think you're looking at, these businesses down here, I think would welcome 108.
No, no,
I
I'm
think you're right.
saying, if I'm at A or B,
Oh,
I
okay.
today am going right. To go to 108th, even if I'm going to Menards, right? I'm not usually allowed farther than Menards, but
Yeah.
I don't. I go to Genesis all the time and. I
you go
I
out this
left.
Yeah,
goofy
It's a
left.
pain.
Yeah.
It's a
We-
terrible intersection, but I
So
go
that
left.
would increase their
We-
folks coming and going as 108 signal. I would think they'd welcome that as business owners.
I don't know that I would look at it that way if I were them, but
Really?
Yeah, I only take 108th. I'm going to the post office or the cleaners down there.
right.
We do get a
Okay,
lot of
buddy,
truck
and over here?
traffic on that intersection and a lot of truck traffic coming out onto Hickman from 108th. And that's
Heck,
part
yeah.
of it too, is
Ferguson back there.
we have, you got the post office, you got a number, so that was part of it too, is we know we have heavier vehicles also trying to get out on Hickman there. And with the spacing, it's, we're still working through the numbers, but when you take the U-Step grant, you take some money that the DOT would provide, it makes the cost minimal for a new traffic signal.
But are we saying that if we put in a temporary signal, we won't be able to take it out? Because why can't we just do a temporary signal?
You can do a temporary signal, and that was actually the original plan at 108th.
But so what's the risk there?
I think the risk is, to Nate's point, is once you put a temporary signal up there, I don't know if you want to speak to
It's-
I don't know that I buy it.
it's really the DOT's risk because it's a state highway.
Yeah. What we've seen with other projects where traffic control is set one way and then reverts back to another way, there's an increase in crashes in that immediate period after it's switched. I'm not saying that it would be typically, once a signal goes up, the expectation is that it stays.
Yeah, I don't see that as a huge risk. And I mean, we're asking
I hear
people to completely change how they're going to drive through the Hickman interchange. I mean, all we're talking about is a light signal. I don't
And
know.
I already hear a lot about why are there so many signals on Hickman already, right? I mean, that's what I hear more of, not, make that temporary one a permanent one.
So am I getting the sense that council is probably not interested in a signal at 108th, regardless of the frontage road piece?
Oh,
Like,
I'm fine with a temporary one if we feel like that's.
well, that's required. The DOT is
Yeah,
requiring that as a part of the
Yeah.
construction project.
Well, I'm good with that. I just don't get why not the cul-de-sac. I really don't, but.
So this, sorry to interrupt.
No,
Go
that's
ahead. No, this is just a concept of one way it could function. So folks that are going to the businesses here, so Starbucks, that functions the exact same as it does today. You go down 111th into their driveway. I think that's the pickup window. So you would either come back out here and use their driveway to go out at 111th, or instead of coming out this driveway and using this intersection, you would come down and go east to 108th to come back. And as we showed in that traffic timing impact, we're talking
businesses,
about 10
They're
seconds.
going to hate
Yeah,
it.
you still have that exit on
but
the
then I-
south
Correct.
by
Duh.
Orange Theory. That is the one I'd go to instead of trying to butt myself into the traffic up there. I could just go to the Orange Theory exit.
If you, and this is part of where we want to follow up with the property owners, just to make sure they understand what this would look like. We still need to have some direct conversations with them. I will say, though, if there is a desire to cut off and change the frontage road, you do need the signal on 108th.
Well,
And that's why the warrants are
That
met.
makes sense.
at
Yeah, that makes
108th.
sense.
Because then it pushes you to that for sure.
Right.
I think for us, it was the 108th signal probably makes sense long-term for the corridor. It was the frontage road part where we knew that there would be some sensitivities because of, are you changing things here for those retailers where they're gonna raise a significant issue with that. But I think we need to spend some time with them for them to see this conceptually. Because they haven't seen, well, they've seen a version of this, right? I can't
No,
remember.
all they received was an aerial with a circle around this intersection saying this is the one we'd close, not how it would lay out,
How it
anything
would
like
lay
that.
out. So
I know
I'd
we-
like to follow up with the property owners just to have a little bit more clarification. They may still feel the same way that you see in the email. And that's something that we have to work through if that's still something that the council's interested in.
And just as a quick FYI, we haven't broke it down, but I know that we put counters out quickly There's about 2,700 cars a week that are coming around and turning east on this road, and about 4,000 that are coming down to the stop sign to take a right a week.
Take a
So-
right or just-
That number was
They
higher.
can only go one way. When they come down here, they have to turn right. So
Those are
again,
the additional counts that we wanted to do to
I
get a
mean,
little
but
bit more
yeah, what you
clarification.
will do is those people who normally turn right onto frontage road, because I do that all the time, are gonna now use this parking lot as a cut through. And that parking lot's already a mess
And-
to navigate through, especially if you're hitting Starbucks peak times in the morning or, you're just adding to that. But I mean, I'm open to it.
And that's adding the concerns of the private property owner too.
To the back of a minute, are we now open to 108 signalization? Since it looks like at some point it's gonna have to go in, we might as well get it paid for when somebody else can pay for it.
From a
I'm
traffic,
indifferent.
sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
indifferent. I'm-
A little hesitant, but I'm open to it, I guess.
Eric, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm somewhat indifferent too. Obviously there's pros and cons to it. I'm just always hesitant to put another stoplight on Hickman. We kind of agree with you. You hear a lot about that, and it just makes you really pause to put another stop on Hickman.
Thanks, Eric. Well, sounds like we may need more information.
Yep,
Just
that's what I hear.
as a quick
Gotcha.
note, the closing the frontage road here makes the 111 signal a heck of a lot more efficient. So from a traffic management standpoint, taking out the whole parking lot, private business aside, on the public street system, it makes a lot of sense to do this. But there's also the political ramifications that you all have to deal with.
and as you've mentioned, this is a known route. It might become a more known route if you can't do this or do the other. So it's thing we'll have to weigh out, look at, get those numbers.
Yep. That's why we wanted to, and tonight was just to touch base on this and just kind of get your feedback. We've got a little bit of time on any decisions related to this because this is in the phase 3 package. But Nate wants it decided sooner than what I'm saying, but we've got time.
Yeah, we've got a couple years.
Yeah, we've got a
Well-
couple of years on this one.
You hear
We
people
would-
like-
The temporary signal won't be needed until the Hickman work is actually being done. That's that phase 3 in 2027.
Our goal would be, if we was gonna do it permanent, would be the year before and get it done. So it
Yeah.
wasn't- it was already
2026
done
would be
when
when
they-
we want to put the signal in.
Yep.
And you need lead time for the mast arm. So it's really bidding it out in 25,
Yep.
late 25.
Some of this I see is for Dart's accordion bus to get around. I hope that's a big enough width. That accordion,
Well,
you can
yes.
talk about the finance. book
We did
tomorrow.
talk about that, and there is a stop
There's a stop there.
There's a,
right outside of
Park and ride.
McCoy.
Do they use their big?
they don't use, they
Articulated
don't
bus?
use the big accordion one for that.
I would
I
hope
don't
not.
think.
Yeah, I think that's,
That's a standard bus, I think.
yeah, but, so I think that's Route 55, if I remember correctly. So that's an express route.
It's the express route along Hickman, yeah.
So that's,
I used to know those routes, but
And it needs to be able to, we need to be able to turn a fire truck in there and, yeah, so that's why it's size, that's why our
Yeah.
cul-de-sacs are sized the way they are. All right.
one thing I forgot to mention staging. So what you will be seeing immediately out there starting next week is some utility relocations on Hickman. That's all in preparation for moving the Des Moines Waterworks feeder main in August. And then that will be followed by the interchange work in earnest. So there'll be some work starting, we hope, next week because there's some utility work that needs to get done by May 1st. So
when's this bid go out for letting?
July.
This July?
Yeah.
To be.
That phase 1, yeah. The first bid. That's the big one. That's like 70 million.
It's a very large package. Hope for some excellent bids. If nothing else, thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate coming to present this. I appreciate your feedback as well. So continue to discuss. My contact information is on the front if you'd like to contact me directly, but certainly go through Jeff if that's more comfortable.
Nate's also a part of our Alice's Road team too with Snyder working on aspects of that.
Lucky him.
Thank you
All
again.
right, thanks, Nate. Now we'll move on to Public Works.
We don't have any big topics tonight.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got you. I know, so exciting. All right, you can flip it over. All right, sticking with the road theme and Public Works theme. This is part 2 of the proposed budget for fiscal year 24-25 to start July 1, focused on road use and utilities. Similar to what you've seen on we were talking about the general fund and trust and agency fund last meeting, financial strategies surrounding road use tax funding, the municipal utility funds. We reviewed a number of these with you all back in August during strategic planning. And as I mentioned last week related to the road use tax fund and the general fund, there is a shift that we're actually proposing this year to shift all of street lighting expenses over to the general fund, where they were split 50-50 between the general fund and road use. So you will see that again here tonight. Also, what we'll do later in this presentation is coming back to you with some revisions to the property tax statement and actually asking for a motion to set the date and time of the new budget hearing date or budget meeting date, and that language to be included in the letter that will go out to every property taxpayer in March. Same on the utility funds in terms of strategy. Again, our goal is always to be in that mid to lower tier of rates, and you'll see that with the proposed rates that we are consistent with that strategy here tonight. Staffing overview, and then I'll turn it over to Jeff to talk a little bit kind of from his memo about the department. This is the department we are proposing the 2 new additions. This is the only new additions in the budget, and this was initially discussed at strategic planning last August related to street and utility maintenance needs that continue to grow, is the addition of 2 operations specialists in the department. And this gives kind of a history of what the staffing levels and changes have been over the years. Last year, we made the change of adding some seasonal positions in Public Works for the first time. And we had some good success with that last year. And in fact, I know Jeff will speak to this. We've actually, I think we've secured some seasonal folks already for this summer, which is great and is a nice supplement to our staff. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff to talk a little bit more about the needs here and long-term and short-term budget issues. So that'll turn it over to Jeff.
Before we move into that, if legal counsel, while we're discussing this, could just be sure that it's legally possible to vote on something in a discussion item.
Oh, as a motion? I would think you'd be able to as a motion.
Well, we'll have.
Yeah.
Oh, whether it, because it's not considered an action item.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh. All right.
Proceed, Jeff.
All right. Talking about public works in general, long-term, we've been talking about for a long time, the potential need for the 2 operations specialists. I guess the long-term is here. It's now the short-term. We've come to that point. I know last August, we talked a little bit, presented here last fall about some of our street needs. We talked about the streets, some of our deficiencies. As we look at our long-term needs, it's delivering on our projects. We have a lot going on, whether it's the interchange project, Alice's Road, the WRA Common Trunk, 2 PCC patching projects, 114th. There's just a whole list of projects going on that we've got a staff that's keeping up with that. But then the other big challenge is street maintenance. That's the one we're really spending a lot of time on, and we have a lot of work to do. Crack filling, pothole patching, deterioration increases maintenance needs. It just goes on, and we're to that point. One of the things, we look at from a crack filling standpoint is we wanted to get out at one time and do about 1/3 of this city a year. We're nowhere close to that. We have not been able to keep up, and we're falling behind. It comes into the needs for additional staff to help keep up as we've expanded and increased our streets. We know on asphalt overlays, you need to stay on them. You need to keep up with your maintenance. We know, and it's been pointed out to us, that at the driveways, issues happen if we don't keep up. it starts falling out. And one of the commitments with this is that we stay up and keep up with our maintenance on those asphalt overlays. Make sure that the edges stay sealed, the cracks stay sealed, give that overlay the longest term possible. We need to keep up with some of our televising, some of our cleaning, all those things are out there. So that comes to, the need for those public works maintenance positions. We're there, we've expanded. I think originally we talked about needing another truck. We do not need another truck. We can keep up with what we have. We'll add a little bit of time. Besides, the cost of the dump trucks have gone up so much, there's no DD to look at one right now, if you can get one. So water main breaks, as our water mains deteriorate, they continue to have more and more outings, as we like to say, and more time we spend out there working on those. The long term is now, and that's why we've included the public works maintenance positions in this budget. We need them now. It's time for us to make that move and keep up with the work that we need to get done. One of the other things you'll see on the short term here, and something we put in there, is a contract for curb and gutter work and working with community development. People come in and want to do driveway. A lot of times where the driveway connects to the street needs some work. Up to now, we've always said it was the property owner's responsibility to put that 2-foot curb and gutter section back. I think we've come to the resolution in working with them and talking that it's something the city will now do. And if they want to replace their driveway, we'll either have them put their driveway in and put a board in where the final elevation will be, and then we'll have someone come in and pour the curb and gutter back. We won't be able to respond immediately, but we will be able to take care of that. So there's about $50,000 in there for a curb and gutter contract every year, allow us to work with the driveway and the residents. So that's one of the big things you see in the budget this year in the short term. So as we move forward, we've got a lot to do. The budget memo outlined a lot of the small items that were included in the budget, talked about what we need and where we're going. We have a lot going on. There's no doubt about it, whether it's from a project standpoint or maintenance standpoint. And with the city catching up with us on age, we're seeing that need to continue to put our best foot forward and concentrate on the maintenance needs out there. So one thing that has come up is Forest Avenue, a little stretch of water main out there. As you can see, we've had 9 breaks on that little stretch, 5 in the last couple of years. I don't know for sure what's causing it. We know that there's a layer of shale out in this area. Specifically, you can see that the addresses, and there are repeat addresses. So we've been in people's yards more than once. Opportunity to take a look and fix that stretch at this time. Approximately 900 feet in forest, another 140 linear feet if you do the intersection there. If you do just the forest section, it's probably 500,000. If you do include the intersection, which I would probably recommend at this time, it's 550 to 600,000 till we actually get in and lay it out. We don't have an exact cost, but it's going to be somewhere in that range. Bid, if we just do the forest, an option to start this year. If we do it, including the intersection, our recommendation would be to get it ready for a spring letting. That intersection butts right up against one of the entrances to Indian Hills Junior High. We'd like to make that a summertime work so we don't interfere with the traffic at that point. So that would be our proposal. It's not in the CIP. It's a project we do need to look at though. And I know our guys would like to quit making winter runs out there if they can.
But with this one is with some of the savings that we've seen in the bids for some of the other projects that included water main. Both 114th and 99th Court included water main as water main replacement. And since we saw some pretty good bids there, we've had this one. This was proposed in the CIP last year. We didn't quite get it in, fit it in the schedule financially. And Jeff talked to me about, with those savings, could we maybe then eke out another water main project? Because then we had the 2024 break when the heating trailer was actually used. It was a few days after the blizzard. Actually, that next week where it got super cold in January. And so we wanted to at least present this to you if doing the full intersection and being cognizant of the school impacts makes sense to me as well. And so we would definitely basically just update the CIP this fall to include this, but we'd like to get started on the design work now. And then we think as we put together the picture, we still have a couple of street bids left to do, but we don't have any water main as much in those bids, the two bids that are going to be coming in March, that we think we've got some savings here to fit in another water main replacement project. And this is one that we would like to target.
So, but if we want to take advantage of that competitive market that we're seeing, I mean, presumably, I mean, we don't know for sure, but
We could bid it this fall and have it be, you know, to take advantage of that potentially.
okay.
What about the street itself?
There'd be some street work, but not too much.
The intersection itself is the only street work. Again, on a quick look, engineering staff took a look. We think we can fit it back in on the north side. There's only 5 driveways on the north side versus many on the south side. There's 2 or 3 driveways on the south side where the curb stop will probably require replacement of the driveway, but not all of them. So,
Can you go back one slide real quick?
yeah,
They have definitely a lot less driveway crossings on the north side than you do the south side. So typically we'll try to do the water main on the opposite side when we're replacing, but this one we would try to do it right alongside the existing.
rather than crossing the street twice,
Rather than
especially since it's
crossing
the
it
inside
twice.
of the corner, it's the shortest distance.
And roughly what was the savings on those last 2 projects? I remember it was significant.
We were $1 million under, it was 2.5 to 1.5 on 99th Court.
2.4 to 1.5. We do have a incentives.
We have
potential.
incentives, so there's, we still need to do the math on all of that. And then 111th, there was
400 and some thousand.
400 to 500 some thousand that has water main. So it would, we maybe not get us all the way to the 550, 600, but we would, we think we've got that in addition to the way the utility is set up, as we'll talk about the water utility cash flow, that's some cushion in there to be able to fit this one in. Just due to the timeliness of those breaks last fall and then the break here right after the first of the year.
But do the issues stop at Forest or do they extend into 99th Street?
They seem to stop right in that area. I don't know, that's the hill where it goes up.
Yeah, I mean,
over,
it's a
or-
pretty sloped road there.
Yeah, I can't tell you why. I just know that that's where it's been happening, which leads us to say that's probably the area we need to concentrate on.
Eric, did you have a question?
No, Jeff, you just answered that. I just wondered why this particular stretch on Forest has had so many breaks, but you just answered it. Thanks.
Anything else on Forest? All
Yeah.
right. Back to this. Last topic for me is talking about our capital equipment replacement. As we continue to look at it, we continue to see prices rise drastically. Still have some issues with acquisitions and delivery. We've taken the time to look at the budget. We've extended several replacements. We delayed 2 half-ton pickups, 2 one-ton pickups, and a water utility pickup that were scheduled for this year. We continue to push them back and we'll continue until we feel that, we're to that point. We absolutely have to, best we can. This year does include some replacements. One of our air compressors, our service SUV, the forklift, the scissors lift, column lifts, concrete screed, and of course, the annual traffic signal replacements and upgrades that are in part of the CIP. As we do this, we'll look at for the scissors lift and the forklift, potentially electrical, getting them set up in the shop there. There was one new item, and that's the mastic applicator. We've rented it in the past. We've had very good luck with it. Problem with renting, of course, is you need to hurry and use it while you have it. You can't use it when things come up without going back and renting again. We feel this will probably have an opportunity to do some additional patching, potentially help us reduce the number of times we go back to the same spot. We seem to get more life years rather than year out of a regular patch. So that is included in this budget.
And Jeff, how could the mastic applicator even, I know obviously just crack sealing too, in terms of I know we were talking about overlays and then going back to the existing neighborhoods that have overlays in terms of addressing some of those issues. How does this tool help us with that in terms of having more flexibility of controlling it?
Mastic applicator is real good for some of our larger cracks in some of our areas. When you look at some of the asphalt in some of these driveways where potentially it's flaking off at the beginning entrance to the drive, where it creates a little bit of a lip. This is something we can put in there and get some longer life rather than just a regular crack fill. We're looking at several options to address that, but this helps us with the flexibility to stay up on it when we get those. Probably would not be used on your new overlays on the street itself because it would create more of a bump than a fill would right now. But you look at a lot of our streets where we're getting bigger and bigger holes, patches, it works real well and it lasts a lot longer than a regular cold patch or a regular crack fill. So it will increase our ability to reduce the amount of times we have to go back to the same areas.
So your thought with having, again, going back into some of those older neighborhoods where we've done the asphalt overlay with additional staff and the mastic applicator, give us an opportunity to maybe address some of those things, those issues along those driveways and,
Yep.
and then even potholes or
Some of
holes
those,
in the asphalt and those existing overlays that we have. Thank you.
yep. This is you, Matt.
Just wrapping up in terms of the road use tax fund itself. As you saw in the cash flow, it's included in the packet. We have had some small use of cash reserves, at least were re-estimated in this current fiscal year. We ended the last fiscal year with some positives on the slight surplus in the road use tax fund. But as we go forward until we get to that special census point, we are seeing that we would likely or potentially have some use of cash reserves in this fund. So hence some of the adjusting of looking at moving the street lighting, the last 50% over to the general fund. We're kind of tracking pretty close in terms of where revenue growth is, but it is still slightly behind where we see expenditure growth in this fund as the 3.5, 3.7%, but it's still pretty close. So we think if we can get through the special census, as shown by the cash flow, that we're in a little bit better shape. But we are still projecting out use of cash reserves for the future. Again, depending on a winter, if we have another winter like we did this winter so far, I guess we're still in February. I'll be careful saying that. We had a pretty rough 2 weeks. But for right now, we're sitting pretty decent in terms of use of reserves, in terms of the level of, snow plowing and ice control that we have to do in a given winter, and how that affects our overtime expenses and our fuel expenses and material expenses, how much additional salt we have to buy in the next summer. So right now we're tracking pretty good, decent for this winter, although that was a pretty rough week on equipment and the guys. But if we, depending on what we see in those winters, that kind of makes this fund go up and down a little bit, depending on that weather. But we feel like we've incorporated everything in there in terms of that was identified in the strategic plan, with the street maintenance enhancements and infrastructure maintenance enhancements being kind of a top priority for the council. And so we have those two positions budgeted, with one of them being in the road use tax fund. And as we'll talk with the sewer utility, one budgeted for in the sewer utility. And this kind of corresponds to the memo that Jeff had provided, a layout where we're falling behind in certain aspects in terms of infrastructure maintenance. And so we felt like that all shouldn't be borne on the road use tax fund, but one of the positions definitely should, because it's related to streets. So, but that's where we're at with the road use tax fund and the budget that we would propose to you all. Any questions on road use before we move over to the utilities? Okay, Liz, and Suzanne, I will turn it over to you.
So the cash flows were all produced by PFM. So Suzanne is gonna join me up here. Suzanne Gerlach from PFM. The water utility has sufficient capacity to hold all of the current expenses and the future debt in a small change of the rates. Originally, we had projected out 5%, and we're able to propose a 3% due to the efficiencies of joining Central Iowa Water Works. So last year, we also projected the $97,000 a year for the additional revenue for the tiered irrigation. And the next slide, I'll show you the results of some of that work. And then on the expense side, half of the revenues are budgeted for the SQR projects and other conservation programs. And then Des Moines Water Works has increased their rate, their water 6% higher for the purchase of water from Des Moines Water Works. And the utility does support the CIP items, such as water main repairs that Jeff spoke of, replacements, and then also the University Avenue pump station on 78th Street. This next slide was also in the memo. It shows that well, first of all, the city really experienced little to no inquiries or responses to the change in the tiered rate that was implemented last summer. And you can see here on the illustration that the city did not see any change in customer usage. I know that question came up at our last meeting as a result of the new structure so far. So the peak usage last year was in September versus August of 2022. And this is really kind of a good baseline for us that we will look over time. Of course, we hope that there'll be some change with joining Central Iowa Waterworks, and staff will monitor those changes and revisit the rates moving forward.
As the council recalls, when we put the tiered irrigation in place this last year, we wanted to start at a reasonable level, kind of seeing how the Central Iowa Waterworks piece was going to play out. So at least we can see, based on 2 summers of both kind of fairly drought conditions, not, as dry at the same time. Obviously, it was August 2022 and September is where we saw the peak in 2023. So we haven't seen a change in behavior yet. Again, it was barely implemented, basically starting in July. So I think this full summer will give us maybe another indication if we're also in another drought summer. Again, it's very flexible depending on, if we all of a sudden have a rainy summer, then it's a little harder to do apples to apples. But what this gives us room for too is, as the Central Iowa Waterworks piece comes in and we look at peaking, and we're tend to be a more higher peaking community, then, council can have some policy discussions of, now that we have the tiered rate structure in place, are there certain levers that you wish to pull? Thinking about, water usage and also knowing that, our capacity is a little bit different now, kind of everybody getting commingled together in Central Iowa Waterworks versus what we had before. The availability of water, which of course has been a huge concern with the drought conditions, with some communities like Osceola still struggling to even produce water, as was featured on the news tonight. So those are still levers. We wanted to start small with the tiered irrigation, knowing that may be a lever that the council needs to consider to, more fully pull in the future. So not a total surprise that we didn't see a huge change in behavior, but it'll be interesting to see, what the next couple of summers hold for us with this irrigation rate system.
I could add a footnote on that. When you're looking at these charts, you're not able to compare the trend lines from year to year precisely because the total number of irrigators, people using irrigation, changes from year to year.
Yep.
So we don't have in these charts that perfect analysis of whether or not behaviors have changed. What you do clearly see, though, to Matt's point, is that the peaking that we are moving toward, once we reach full build out, we're getting a clearer sense for what that peaking number could actually look like.
And one other piece too that I'll mention related to water, as was mentioned in the memo, with joining Central Iowa Waterworks, and I think Matt discussed this, I think Suzanne has mentioned this in the past, that the rate system, our regular water, forget the irrigation piece for a moment, but our regular rate system is completely 100% variable. And that was perfect when we were just buying water from Des Moines Waterworks and they were carrying all the risk and liability of the assets. Well, now we're owning a portion of the assets, and there is a portion of the Central Iowa Waterworks rate structure that is a fixed cost and then a portion that's variable. So whether we want to mirror that, or I would encourage, and one thing that we're going to come back to you next year is once Central Iowa Waterworks has started to initiate their rates, because this will be the last year that we'll basically be paying Des Moines Waterworks, will now be paying Central Iowa Waterworks in 2025, is the implementation of a fixed and variable rate structure, similar to what we have in the sewer utility, kind of an availability fee. Because if we have years where water usage is very low because of heavier rains and it's non-drought conditions, the risk is all on the city in that sense, because we're still carrying the fixed cost. Central Iowa Waterworks is going to still charge us the fixed cost no matter what. It's now not 100% variable anymore. So that, just in terms of protecting the utility, it's not a huge massive change, and it's just a structural change basically in the rates. Not quite the same as what we did with the tiered irrigation rates, last year, but this is something that we plan to come back with next year in these discussions on rates, is looking at a fixed and variable function similar to the sewer utility. Because that's how the WRA is set up, where the debt expenses, we get the debt expense no matter what. And that's the fixed cost. And then the flow rate is the variable cost. Well, basically Central Iowa Water Works is going to be set up the exact same way or very similar way. So it would be prudent on us in terms of the financial responsibility of this utility to do the same thing, to make sure we're mirroring that. We've kind of roughly looked at what those percentages would be, but we will come back with a more formal proposal next year.
Good, thanks, Matt. The next slide shows the current rate. So water rate comparison with the other like communities in our metropolitan area. At the current rate, Clive is at the same mid spot as we were last year. And last year we jumped Ankeny and Norwalk in residential rankings. And then the next slide is our proposed rate. And I think Suzanne's gonna take over.
Yeah, so the 3% is equivalent to roughly $1.27 per month for a residential user with 5,000 gallons per month. And looking at your neighbors who are very close to you in the slides here, their rate increases are ranging from 8.5% to 5%. So you're in the lower tier for your increases this year, so you might jump another spot in water specifically. So yeah, so that's
where we're at water.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So for the sewer utility, the budget shows no significant changes to the internal costs associated. Outside factors are due, of course, to the WRA. Rate increases are due to those expenses with WRA and the tight debt coverages that they have going up. We're projecting capital projects in future years as part of the sewer main replacement program. Also looking to use some of the sewer to replace and supplement our street work. And also Matt had mentioned the staff position that we were proposing as well. Staff's proposing a 2% rate increase for sewer. And that's showing the similar, I think in 2020 is when we're proposing a 3% increase, but we're able to propose for future years 2% going out.
Are we watching the WRA's
well, yes.
future
Oh, yes.
billion-dollar project that's
Yes.
looking 14%
Yeah,
increase?
so the cash flow, Matt provides all of the members of the WRA a 10-year outlook. And so I don't know if he's modeled all of the new CIP because the 2080 I think is in progress right now, but yes, we go out. I mean, the WRA model goes out 40 years, but we model 10 years out for Clive to keep an eye on it. And I just got the WRA budget this week that was published. And so just this year, we have a higher number in the projections. The credits were higher, so it's a roughly $200,000, not quite $200,000 lower for your actual WRA costs in fiscal 25. So I'm banking that 2% and hanging on to it because we probably will need, I mean, we'll see, but $1 billion CIP is a scary number. But we are watching for sure, 100%, yes.
One thing that's
I'm hearing double-digit future increases, right?
yeah, and how it'll be interesting to see too and project out how it impacts us too, because our percentage of the overall flow
Sure.
is going down at the same time. So yes, we're still going to feel that. But hopefully we're not feeling it maybe as much as some other members that have the higher growth and higher flow rates going up and are contributing to the needs for some of those improvements. So.
And the other thing I'd say is that when we did the last 2080, the $400 million CIP, it's paced slower than I think that it was anticipated to be just because it's a lot of projects. So I wouldn't be surprised if this pace is a little bit slower than we're projecting as well. So that gives us more time to keep up with the rates as well.
Yeah, I don't think they've ever actually hit the target, the annual
No.
target of the amount of debt that they were going to issue in the last
I don't-
couple of years.
Yeah, I don't think
They've
so.
been
I
behind a
just-
little bit.
Yeah, so I think the pacing helps keep up with the rates and charges, but that's why we're not doing 0 every year, to your point, because we don't want to get too far behind. And I will say, I'll wait till we get to that.
So, okay.
Just gonna go there. So.
Here's the current rates. And again, we've stayed in the same spot as we did last year for residential and commercial as well. And it, like you're just talking, it'll be interesting to kind of watch, you know, how it affects with Grimes coming on and joining and then the biogas. So kind of something to watch for us, but here's the future rates that you were wanting to talk about.
Yeah, and so we're doing 2%, which is roughly 82 cents a month on that $5,000, 5,000 gallon bill for the average residential user. And around the metro, there's 6%, 0%, 9%, 5%, and 7.5% multi-year rate increases happening in the WRA now. Remember, Grimes is coming online. They have a multi-year 7.5% for they're fully coming online. They're not connected yet, hopefully soon. And then that will impact the flow again to distribute the costs.
But these future rate grids, they show our increase, but not the other communities.
It doesn't, you're right.
Correct. Then that's my point. That's why I'm saying, like, I'm looking at who's
Yeah.
above you and below you.
Right, right.
And so
clients.
I'm, we happen to work for all those
Yeah.
cities. So
She
I'm
has
like
some
checking the
insider
cash
information.
flows and just checking percentages in that year. And your funds are all healthy. It's not like we're getting behind in rate increases, but we're doing just sort of the keep up until there's a reason to come back with more significant rate
I think Grimes
increases.
is officially online now.
Is it open?
Is it send and flow down now?
Oh, okay, that's new, but I haven't talked to him this week, so I don't know.
Yeah.
or
And
this
that's
month.
part, and that's part of the reason
Yeah.
why
yeah.
that
them
WRA
especially,
sewer
yeah.
that we were talking about earlier as part of the Hickman project is moving forward faster now because it has to be able to
I don't remember. That's a good question.
handle the Grimes flow
Mhm.
coming through. And as alluded to earlier, both on the water and the sewer side, I would comfortably say we're below the average in terms of the rate increases that you're seeing in the metro area from these other communities in terms of percentage, especially the sewer one at 2%. So this is putting us in a very favorable spot. And we're also making some pretty massive investments in terms of sewer replacement, 99th Court, doing full sewer replacements underneath those streets. That's also in our cash flow. So we're able to make capital investments and also stay in that competitive lower tier on sewer rates. And then of course, Urbandale's rate's always hard to really compare to because it's actually supplemented by a property tax rate. So they actually charge a property tax levy of 22 cents, I think, 25 cents, something like that. The sanitary sewer district does. So it's kind of hard to compare to the Urbandale rate because it's supplemented by property taxes.
Cheaters. I
Yeah.
didn't want to look. Oh, no, they're not cheating. I'm joking.
This is Pete's slide. Pete, you are up.
So with the stormwater utility. I'm working with you. One of the items that was identified in the water resources master plan was to continue to see if we could better distribute the total cost of the utility across different property types in Clive. And the way that we will accomplish that, balancing that burden a little bit better than it has been in the past is by adjusting the equivalent rate unit, ERU. ERU, when it was first calculated in the early 2000s, took the average amount of impervious area on a residential, single-family residential property, calculated that at 3,667 feet. If you look now at all of the single-family residential in Clive, that average amount is actually closer to 4,100. When we made the tiered residential rate changes last year, we anticipated that the ERU would be moving to that 4,100 number. That sits right in the middle of those residential tiers that we've set up. So there's some logic to how we arrived at that number. The net effect, though, is when we are calculating for commercial properties, having a higher ERU will result in some decrease in revenues that come from the commercial properties, the commercial property owners are paying for their stormwater. You can see the way that the math works out there. The ERU is multiplied by the, it's there on the bullet under number 2 on how those items work out. It's a decrease, but it's one that we believe is manageable as we look at the cash flows, and one that essentially will balance out among the different types of properties better than it does today.
It provides that equity, and that was part of the kind of the policy statements that that you all adopted last year for both the irrigation and the stormwater tiers in terms of our goal of to provide some more equity between the commercial and residential ratepayers. And then we can all back it up to the same numbers in the ordinance. So this would actually be adjusting this in and the stormwater ordinance. Go ahead, Pete.
I see there on number 4, though, we do have an error where we didn't actually insert that commercial.
Oh, yeah, we forgot to put the number in.
Insert the number.
We've got, and we can pull that right from the cash flow. I
Mhm.
think it was roughly 25,000. 30,000 in
The
revenue, I
reduction-
thought.
Estimated number. of
I
decrease.
just checked the revenue to see how much revenue that would reduce. but I
Yeah.
checked that. I have the cash flows right here. So from 77,325 to 6,104. So 1,220, a reduction of 1,220 ERUs per month in the bill.
If you want by that, the ERU, that's roughly that number.
So in total revenue per year, I estimated around $230,000 a year in reduction.
The
Okay.
230.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mhm.
230, we do times 12,
Right.
times the rate. All right. It's 12.4, so. That's a little bit more.
Yeah, that's 200,000, yeah. So the rate increases then, even though we show it consistent, that 8% from what we showed last year, or it was 7% to 8%, and then we held that 8%. So there's that slight shift. Because if you're increasing the rates with the ERUs going down, then the residential, there's more equity now. The commercial is paying as a percent less as an overall customer base than the residential. And that was part of our goal with changing the ERU to basically reflect what the true number is for the community as we've done these measurements with the tiered irrigation last year to that 4,100. If we're saying in our ordinance, that's the equivalent, our equivalent residential unit has increased to 4,100 square feet, but our ordinance only says 366.7 from when we started. It's not an accurate reflection of what our impervious surfaces are and the average equivalent residential unit is in the community. We felt we needed to show that and reflect accurately what it is in the city of Clive. And to be fair to those commercial property, to those commercial stormwater utility payers.
We'll make sure we communicate that clearly to all the commercial rate payers in advance of when the new rates go into effect. It is a much smaller group to communicate than what we did last year when we were communicating to everybody who is a residential rate payer. So we're expecting that'll be well received by those commercial property owners. And as a reminder, when we prepared for this change last year, we were expecting quite a bit of casework and it didn't materialize. But we'll be prepared this year should it, because there will be communications to everybody. And a reminder to all of them, if you're a residential rate payer, that you are going to be assigned to a specific tier.
Anything
Okay,
more
on the
cap
expenditure
rates?
side, you can see those outlined. I can speak to the first one there about the first item there about the grants. The stormwater grants program will be launching this spring. These are designed to help property owners, commercial and residential, accomplish projects that better help them catch and infiltrate stormwater where it lands. It will not be used for things like soil quality restoration. We have our standalone program for that. And it also would likely not be used for trees because we'll have our standalone tree program as well. But for your bioretention, your rain gardens, so forth, that's where we'd really be able to come alongside commercial properties and residential properties to help them accomplish these very good projects.
Excellent. Okay. So our current rates, we're still stayed right there at the highest of the rates, but in our next slide, we're going to show you, and I'll just give you just a pause there to see where we're at. Again, showing the tiered, pulling that out from just a one-time fixed rate from the year before. And then this year, again, you can kind of maybe go back and forth in the memo because you'll see that the other cities are increasing their stormwater rates significantly as well.
Yeah, and I just called out West Des Moines specifically. They did a multi-year rate ordinance increasing $2.50 over a 4-year period. And I think they're only in year 2 of that. So they did 75 cents for 2 years and 50 cents for 2 years. So they'll be doing rate increases through 26. So they'll move up the list as well.
So we're proposing 8% this year. Over the last, I don't know how many years now, we've had either double digit or very close to double digit increases in stormwater, and necessarily so. I'm not complaining, but do we have any projection as to when this may normalize a little bit more so that it's not double digits or near double digit increases every year?
Yeah, the soft landing, we'll call it, is 26, where we sort of, it was 3%, but then we changed the ERU, so now we're at 5%. So that's gonna be kind of the soft landing, and then we'll just see where we are, I guess, once we get through this year, next year, get through another change with the billing, see how that shakes out in actuality, watch those. And then we're estimating 5% in 26 going forward each year. Whether those are actually needed, the goal is 3% originally, that's what we had in there originally. We'll do everything we can, obviously, to keep that as close to where it needs to be.
And it's mostly driven by our CIP.
Yeah.
So this includes the 5-year CIP that you all adopted back in December. If that CIP were to change significantly up or down, that really drives the stormwater rate, because the capital is a big chunk of the stormwater utility. Versus a little bit different for the water and sewer utilities, although they have that debt capital component. The operating expenses is a much higher percentage of the whole than the stormwater utility
Yeah,
is.
it's just my hope that at some point we can not be doing 10% a year or whatever.
Or
something
close
else
to
to that.
10. Yeah, getting to that 5% will be nice for sure. And it depends too. One option that, we've talked about for more significant stormwater projects as those come along, even talking about future kind of future proofing, like whether it was with Lanai and stormwater chambers, that's a revenue source this is a revenue source that can be utilized for some of those improvements where maybe you issue debt against the utility. We've been cash funding all of our improvements up to this point. There may be a point of where we look at for $1 million plus stormwater projects where maybe we want to look at least model what it looks like to issue general obligation debt abated by stormwater utility rates to kind of smooth out future increases. Again, you'd have a debt issue there and be paying interest, but I wouldn't advocate it for it right at this moment. But that is, I think, is something that we need to have in our toolbox to provide that flexibility for more significant stormwater projects that may come down the line.
The other thing, Councilman, because I remember you brought this point up last year when we discussed it as well. This is the small number on the utility bill, which works in our favor. When we look at it as a percentage, certainly year over year, you see a larger percent increase. But I think when most folks are looking at their utility bill, it's the sewer and the water that stand out for them. 2% on those dollars is significantly different than 2% on the stormwater, or even 8% on the stormwater.
That's a valid point.
That's coming back.
Right. Thank you. Moving on to the general fund piece of the Public Works Department. Again, really most of it is related to the street lighting piece that we talked about last week. Of course, there is a portion of Public Works budget that is supported by the general fund, whether it's the portion that they're working on, the engineering team, Public Works Administration working on general fund related projects, whether it may be park projects, trail projects. There's an engineering component of that. So those are some small transfers that are included between the general fund and the for the Public Works Department that's paid for out of the general fund rather than paid for out of the road use tax fund, excuse me. So circling back to this from last week or 2 weeks ago, last meeting, again, just a reminder on where we're at in terms of cost to the Clive taxpayer. And we will show you how we try to take the council's feedback and translate that into the statement, the property tax statement coming up here in a moment. And another reminder too of we're taking a lot of these materials that you see here, and the communications team along with the finance team are building kind of the public facing assets of communicating this budget. Some of these tables that you're seeing are going to be a part of that. They'll look in probably a different form, probably a prettier graphic form than what we have on these slides. But that's going to be part of us telling that story of how we rank. So this was the same slide as you saw 2 weeks ago, the original draft, date and time, kind of pending our discussion a little bit earlier. What I'll be looking for tonight is just head nods when we get to this next slide here on the statement, but particularly the date and time of the meeting, just to make sure we're very clean on formal procedure. We'll put something on the consent agenda for the next council meeting on March 14th. Just a simple resolution setting that April 11th, 5:15 p.m. date. We'll probably send this information to the auditor ahead of that, anticipating that as long as the council's comfortable with that, but we'll have that formal action for you on the next consent agenda. So you have the previous draft at the top, a couple revisions that council took, or staff took council's feedback, and you see the character counts in other forms than just at the beginning of our council meeting for the property tax truth and taxation statement. We've gone through a couple of those revisions and then have a new draft revision recommended to you that you see at the bottom of the screen there, trying to speak to the cutting the property tax rate. Average households and businesses will pay less tax to the city of Clive than last year, which again, on the average household and business side, we feel is an accurate statement based on our numbers. And then explore tax and budget details in Clive's investments in streets, parks, and infrastructure at cityofclive.com. So we tried to include that one piece that the council really wanted to see, and still kind of speaking to the investments you're making in the community through this budget as well. And then, of course, sending them to the website and this page that is being built to include a lot more detail at cityofclive.com. So it gets us to 285. So ChatGPT got the 15 characters down from the first version.
I like the
Prompting was really.
The prompting was very helpful.
Thank you.
But if you want to know how, your staff uses AI sometimes, this is an example of that.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's good.
Yeah, I like the recommended one.
Eric?
Oh, yeah.
Good with the recommended.
Good. All right.
Thank you
So
for making those changes.
yeah, oh, happy to. So that will be kind of flipping back. So that will be what's that little paragraph at the bottom of the table that you're seeing here, and then I'll have the date and time. So that's what will go out in March. Again, we'll have that resolution on the next agenda just to reaffirm that date and time. Again, April 11th, 5:15 p.m. I know I've all sent you meeting notices for that, to have that on your schedule. We'll put together a very kind of a brief budget presentation brief, because I know that meeting's about hearing from the public, but just a quick summary of, basically these two workshops into 10 slides, maybe, try to keep it pretty tight. Of course, focus on the cost of the taxpayer and the investments that the council is making in the community with this budget. But we'll keep a kind of a quick budget summary to do at the beginning of that meeting, and then open it up to public comment after that.
One of the pieces that we're planning on creating this year will be a sort of 4-page, like the utility newsletter, that includes not just information about what the rate is going to be, what that will mean for the city's budget, but also how we compare to neighboring communities, a section on the utilities, and also talking about the capital improvements that are scheduled for this coming year. Well, we're borrowing heavily from some other cities that have done these in the past, and we think they'll be a useful tool as we do our storytelling.
Last slide for all the budget presentations. Just looking for final questions, council support with what's included in this proposed budget in terms of rate increases, the staff additions, and of course, the proposed tax hearing statement that we just discussed. And then you see the next steps in terms of the schedule, a little bit different, as we mentioned at the beginning, than previous years due to the property tax bill, with that April 11th property tax basically meeting at 5:15, and then your regular meeting at 6 p.m. We'll have an action item to actually set the formal public hearing that's been in Iowa code for a very long time for that second meeting in April, for then you to formally consider and adopt the proposed FY 24-25 budget. And then the end of April is our deadline to get that off to the auditor, which is basically a month later than what it historically has been. Depending on your feedback on the rate increases for the utilities, because of that timing with the budget approval moving back a month, we will have to start the first reading of the utility ordinances in April. because they need to be finalized by May. So then they can apply to June, they can be published appropriately to apply to June usage to be billed in July. So what we're planning on is the first reading would occur at the April 11th meeting, second reading in April 25th. And because of the DC trip, we move up that first meeting in May to the first Thursday in May. That would be the third reading. So it'd still be post-budget adoption. We would also do the solid waste rate change at that time as well, because that's just a resolution that doesn't require an ordinance. So then we'd have all the rate changes finalized by the beginning of May to be applied to those June usage for July bills. And then the community educational information campaign that Pete spoke about, particularly related to the commercial users and the stormwater ERU change for those customers. Feedback, comments, questions. How are y'all feeling about what we've laid out to you over these last couple of meetings?
Looks like there's head nodding and consensus. You too, Eric?
Yes, Mayor, I'm fine with it.
Very good.
Do we track like linear feet on crack ceiling and that type of thing on an annual basis? And then could we get if we do, can we get a report back of, one of the arguments of a public works operations specialist is for that.
Mm-hmm.
So to see that return would be an interesting
Mm-hmm.
number, right?
I think on linear feet and Lucity, we know we track it in Lucity. I don't know how you track it. But
Miles.
so miles of crack ceiling.
Go over, there's so many cracks. We don't pick them.
Yeah, we can get you that number though, at least, because I think you had that in your memo from August, if I remember. We'll get you that number though.
Okay,
Yeah.
Just for next year to say what we did over.
And what we're doing more of, right?
Or a new person, yeah.
Right, and that's part of the, reasons for the
machine.
positions. The mastic applicator, yep.
One thing I can add to that as well, all of these investments in streets, whether it's the maintenance or activity or it's the capital work, it's going to be really important because when we throw big numbers at the audiences, it sort of gets lost a little bit. We need to be able to visualize this data for them, show that it's investments across the entire city, which it is, and make sure that we accurately represent the full scope of work that the Public Works team is doing. So to that end, I've been working with Corey and also the Public Works staff and using Lucity data to improve the way that we're doing our maintenance activity map. In the past, that was very much just about kind of focused on the potholes. We're building a new one now that catches that, plus all the potholes that we're proactively just filling that we find, plus additional maintenance activities like the crack ceiling and the curb work as well. We're not ready to share that quite yet, but it is coming. And so as you're doing that work with your constituents, you'll have a place where you can point them to show that, yep, it's not just the big multi-million-dollar new reconstructions on projects like the interchange, but it's also the stuff that's on their street today that needs the attention.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I have your honor on this one. Thank you very much. And hard work by the team behind me, the department heads, Liz and her team, putting all this together. So we had a lot of new things to do this year with the property tax bill. Of course, when you're proposing a property tax levy increase, that helps
Decrease.
make things a little bit different.
Decrease.
Sorry, excuse me, decrease. But we also are getting a read, probably by the April hearing. We'll have formal information, at least from all the other metro cities, of where they're going to end up. I kind of have some informal numbers.
There's a
Where
number of
folks
them that are doing decreases as well.
that are doing increases, yeah.
They're doing decreases.
They're doing decreases, and I'm seeing both.
Yeah.
Yeah, increases and decreases. We'll have that table because that'll be published information in March, because they'll have it in their letter,
Right.
just like all of us will. At that summary, that budget summary presentation we'll do on April 11th, we'll have that table for you to show you where we'll at least know where we'll rank.
Mhm.
We won't know as on the utility side, because that'll take them, just like us, multiple readings to do their rate increases, but we'll know on the property tax levy side. Your Honor, I can do the next item from right here too, if you'd like.
Please do.
All right. Again, won't spend much time on this unless there's council questions.
Any questions?
No, sir.
None.
Okay.
Good.
I mean,
About from you,
read it in-
Eric, you have any
I read it in the
questions?
memo. I'm good.
Okay.
No questions.
All right, very
Love it.
good. We'll move into reports. Pete.
Thank you, Your Honor. So this week, we've been working very closely with the police department. All the staff there have done a great job, being very generous with their time. Thank you, Chief, very much for that. So we can get a great video put together to support the recruiting we're always needing to do with law enforcement. But the first couple hires that we're going to be using this for is the first one that's very high profile. It will be the new chief. So I'm looking forward to being able to share that video in early March to coordinate with the official launch of that search. As soon as we finish up that video, Molly and I will be jumping both feet into all of our preparations for budget storytelling. That will get heavy focus throughout the months of March and April. I'll have a chance to sort of dry run some of our points with the March utility newsletter. The mayor has decided he would like to prioritize some of those headlines that you all have given us direction on tonight for his March column. But we'll need to keep hitting those points all the way through the spring. We'll also have the condition of the city presentation the mayor is making in late March at the Chamber's monthly membership luncheon, and we'll find other places to put that information. As all of you are getting questions from residents and others about that, we'll provide the links you need to be able to point people in the right direction.
Thank you, Pete. Srikant.
Last week, we talked about getting DART ridership numbers for Clive. I did speak with Luis over there and he provided a presentation, which I'll forward to you, Matt, and then I'm guessing it just go out in the update. But essentially we have 6 fixed routes that have some touch point to Clive. They're counting the one that I think it's route 72. It has one stop at the very end that's in Clive. So it does still have pickups in Clive that are going south down into West Des Moines. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But so they have us listed as 6 fixed routes. The primary ones that we consider the Clive routes is the Hickman Express route. And then there's the kind of the main Route 3 on University that is kind of more regular service. There's 5,275 boardings in Clive in 2023. So that doesn't translate to unique riders. It could be one rider riding multiple buses multiple times a day, but the numbers that they have for the fixed route is not rider specific. They don't track by unique user. So the only number they can give us is the boardings. So there's 5,275 boardings in Clive for FY23. It's 28 average weekday boardings and 54 average weekday alightings. So, I mean, there is a kind of an asterisk next to that number because, and actually I take that back, sorry. So for 2023, that's the total number, that 5,275. There's a chart here in this slide deck that talks about historical numbers. Those numbers, at least according to the way Luis explained it to me, if you look at the raw numbers, they're artificially inflated because of detour routes and some kind of miscalculations that used to happen with the old system. So they didn't quite track it as granularly as they do now. And so if you look at the historical, especially like back in 2019, it looks like we had 32,000 boardings. But again, Luis wanted to let us know that that's actually not accurate because that system just wasn't that specific. So he kind of did an analysis for us and kind of averaged it out. So for 2019, the estimated actual fixed route boardings is 9,388. So that's, pre-pandemic essentially. Pandemic 2020 dropped down to just under 4,500. 2021 dropped down to 3,600, 3,613, and then it's slowly kind of increased back up. So 2022 was 4,700. And then actually this number is slightly different, so I'll have to go back and ask him.
But did you say 28 typical daily boardings?
Yeah, so 28 average
From Clive?
weekday boardings at Clive stops. Yep. And then for paratransit, they do track unique riders. So we have 199 unique individuals that are utilizing paratransit in Clive, for a total of 4,288 paratransit trips in FY 2023. So of that 4,288, 1,346 of those trips were taken by Clive residents.
Very good.
So, and then there's a chart here for historical as well, but
Okay.
yeah,
We'll look forward to seeing it. Anything else?
nope, that's it. Thank you.
Ted?
Only thing I have is MPO finished up its executive director search, extended an offer. The offer was accepted, and Dylan Mullinex, the previous interim director, is now the full-time executive director. Dylan is who I supported all along, so I'm very happy about this. I think he'll be an outstanding director for the MPO, and he's got a lot of ties and relationships around the metro, and he did a really excellent job as interim director and kind of calming things down and kind of bringing some normalcy back to the organization. And so he'll do a good job. So very pleased with that.
And he's already on.
He's started Monday full time.
Very good. Eric, what do you have?
No report tonight, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Michael?
I don't have a report, but I would like to hear from Pete about the Schuler Walnut Creek meeting, just a snippet of it.
Sure. So last week we convened the neighborhood. We ended up with a ballpark 70 to 80 folks, about half those folks in person, about half are online. We've recorded the video and shared the slides from that meeting, posted them on the project page, and sent an update to our distribution list, which is now up to 90 different unique emails, some from Waukee and Urbandale, but mostly Clive residents. The primary type of concern we heard from the residents had to do with vegetation. Trees, especially that were coming out, why they're coming out, and there's a variety of reasons. And then, as important, what's the plan for getting us on a path back to something that looks like what they're enjoying today? No way to sugarcoat it. There's some places where the tree removals that have happened because they were invasive, or because we needed the woody material for the stream bank stabilization, or because we needed the access for getting into that space. In some spaces, that's really changed the backyard experience for some folks who had come to sort of think of that part of the greenbelt as their backyard. And that's a normal way for people to experience it. And we want them to have that kind of affection and care for those spaces. What's incumbent upon us now, and I want to really credit Ray for sort of setting a good tone on this. What's incumbent on us now is to show folks that we do have that plan, and that we are going to bring a casework approach to what's going on in their backyards. We can't guarantee that we're going to have a perfect reconstruction of the sort of vegetation that they previously had, but we are open to having conversations with them about how dense the vegetation screen might be, and also want to support them if they want to put things on their own property to kind of recreate that vegetation screen that was previously there. So already we've got some groups of neighbors that are all contiguous who've reached out to us and said, could we have a meeting? And we've scheduled a couple of those already in May, I'm going to ballpark May, depends a little bit on the DNR schedule, but we do need permits still to do the work west of Alice's Road on the stream bank. That will trigger mailings from the Department of Natural Resources. And in advance of when that mailing goes out, we do want to make sure that we continue to have some robust touches with the folks west of Alice's Road to address their concerns. Because even though we've had a nice response, there's still many people who haven't responded yet. To give you a sense of the scope of our outreach, there were over, I think it was 1,600 unique pieces of mail to households we sent to invite folks to that neighborhood meeting, similar to the footprint we used this time last year. Everybody who lives north of Douglas and Clive received one of those and had an opportunity to engage, and we'll leave the doors open. so that folks, as they have these questions come forward, and they will come forward, they know that they've got people ready to listen to them and understand their concerns and to explain to them why we're taking this path.
I would say I joined in a little bit into the meeting because I had gotten some text messages from some folks that were there that were a little hot under the collar. And so I came out to the school, but I would say that by the time they left, most of them were pretty calmed down. Did they like it? No. Do they like the current situation? No. They did say they got all their questions answered. We had some great compliments afterwards too. There were sections that wanted more. Talked to Jim and I know Jeff did a lot of work on the way out as people were leaving to talk to them and make sure they got their questions answered. But I think as council members, you're going to hear, and mayor, you're going to hear about this issue because there are some passionate ones. And you still have some of the same old, you're putting a trail in my backyard and why should I have to shovel because you moved there and you knew the plan. I actually told them that, man, you knew you were moving into this. You knew that there was going to be development on Alice. You knew there was going to be, and yes, sidewalks. So they were saying, no sidewalks on our side of Clive. And it's just not how we do it, And so, but I do think that the staff did a fantastic job explaining this, doing the best they could. And a lot of compliments from the folks that stayed afterwards. So, but a lot more heavy lifting to come.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
That's it for me.
Good question. Neil?
No report, Your Honor.
Just a couple items. Some work happening this week continues on legislative items related to stormwater. Pete and others have been working really hard on. Our budget, I was going to mention that I will be joining Councilmember McElhaney at the DART budget workshop tomorrow.
Yeah.
For
Breakfast, lunch,
that.
and dinner.
Right. And just a reminder, for those of you who haven't got back on those strategic planning dates and then that Living History Farms request, would like feedback on that. I'll include that in my weekly update tomorrow. And then I'll be out of the office Wednesday through Sunday next week. He'll be in charge. So with that, unless there's any questions, Your Honor, I have nothing further.
Further questions, correspondence? Anything else for the good of the order this evening? If not, we'll adjourn at 8:31.